Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are live right here on Freaky Friday. Yes, indeed. And we'll get there in the end. Woo, woo, woo. Yes, yes, yes. Look at that, Scotty. We've even got accompanying music coming in the door, isn't it great? We've got the live band. We've got the three amigos back together again. And today I can't think what could possibly go wrong as I take you on board this bright new shiny ship that we've got, Scott. We're going to step back in time. We're going to Liverpool and I'm going to take you on the maiden voyage. Me, you and NeSe. We're going to step on board this indestructible ship. Nothing can take it out, Scott. Nothing to worry about. There'll be music playing. There'll be dancing girls. There'll be casinos. The band promises to play all night long. All night long, no matter what's happening. Would you like to come on board the Freaky Friday Titanic with me?
I mean, I was about to say, isn't it just, it's only fitting that we have the band already playing on the deck, as we come in, and as they say, the band plays all the way to the end, brother. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation tonight. And we're going to start off with some interesting anomalies about the Titanic. And
Some
then
would say they're Titanic anomalies.
Titanic anomalies,
Yes.
indeed. And then wherever the conversation takes us from there, I mean, who knows? It's definitely, going to be another one of those Freaky Fridays, man.
It sure is. It sure is. And of course, it's not just me and Scotty Lopez. No, we have got Mr. NeSe. He is in the building. How you doing, brother?
Captain, permission to come aboard if I can
granted,
to work my way
sir, granted,
across
yes.
the Atlantic.
I tell you what,
May I
dude, it's
work
not
and
that
be
long ago,
room and
right?
board
We were talking about the pirates, and now here we are back again tonight. This is right at home for you, sailor boy NeSe, isn't it?
I'm strong tooth of spinach because I eat me spinach.
But yes, are you looking forward to tonight's shenanigans, Mr. NeSe?
Oh, I am looking for everything possible, and what a delight in my darkness to be here again and again and again. We keep saying, how quick is the TikTok going? And again, it's flowing tonight with the Woo Crew. Captain Kev, set sail. The Love Boat is following.
We're going to turn it into the Love Boat real quick, real soon. And, we might not hit said iceberg. We might actually make it to the shores of Speculation Island before the time runs out today. And, of course, don't forget, folks, we are merely the warm-up act. Because coming up after today's Freaky Friday, it is the quintessential paranormal show on any network. Yes, Brent Thomas will take you through his paranormal portal. And that's right here on TFRlive.com. And a big thank you to everyone on TFRlive.com. Don't forget, maybe you're not aware, but we've got a chat room over there. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did, so we'll take it as a sign. And we'll go on with this little lyrical kind of rapping we've got going on. But you can find our chat room at TFRlive.com/chat. We're also on YouTube this week, this Freaky Friday. Yes, it's our one simulcast of the week. And we're going out on TalkStream Live, Paranormal Radio app. There's that really kind of, I think we're getting like disembodied voices from the background, Scott. It's like we're doing a seance live on air, man. Having a ghost box plugged in.
Hey, it's the hot new thing now, man.
Is it?
If you don't have disembodied voices, just randomly coming in on your little YouTube videos, you're not doing it right.
You missed all the fun and shenanigans yesterday. All the fun and shenanigans. We were taking a look at some of the April Fool's stories, and my favorite story of the whole day was the quantum zoom effect. Yes. somebody had mistakenly pressed the wrong buttons during a Zoom call, and they had put it onto Google's Sycamore quantum computer, and it was allowing people to take part in multiple conversations at once. Oh, yes, indeed.
Wait,
So-
wait. Hold on.
It was an April Fool, dude.
So-
Don't overthink it. It was an April Fool. Don't worry about it. Yeah, April Fool.
Okay.
Yeah.
During the breaks, I'll tell you
So-
about the incident I had with my quantum magnifier.
Oh, nice. You've got a quantum magnifier. Jimmy's got a gravity lens. Scotty's about to go and try and install quantum zoom, and I'm making my way over to the chat room. Yes, indeed. So over here in the chat room, it's not the Wookiee cave. Not until there's at least 20 people in there. We're still at chat room levels today. We've got myself, Sophia, Lockie, Bam, Alan, Onslow, all one. Psycho Dave, Paradoxical Anomaly. There'll be a few of those by the time tonight's show finishes. And last but not least, over there, we have got Daryl Bowles. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to the Wookiee Cave at tfrlive.com/chat, but we're going to get into it. Because we're going to talk about the Titanic, first of all. It's something that we brought up towards the end of last week's Freaky Friday. It was a random thought I had, because our good friend has taken to the airwaves again. Can't talk about that too much because he is verboten. Algorithms go mad when you mention him. But I remember getting a certain, not the captain of any ship ever, Popeye, onto the show one time, and he actually came on and he blew my mind, Scott. Because little did I know that the Titanic, I'd always thought really interesting story. You know, this big indestructible ship set sail. It's got all these rich people on board. It's got a heap of history attached to it. We've got the iceberg thing going on. And, you know, it's one of the first things you really kind of learn about in school. Well, back in the day, I don't know what they teach you in school now. But, yeah, little did I know, though, that it was shrouded in so much mystery, you know, question marks to this day over it. And we're going to take a look at some of the stuff tonight. But did you know when you were kind of growing up, before you entered the rabbit hole, did you know that this was a kind of mystery history event?
No. I mean, I always just grew up, you know, you learn about it and you're always taught, oh, you know, it was one of, you know, history's great kind of, you know, disasters, you know, where you had a massive amount of people, you know, perish in one event, you know, due to, you know, that the ship hit an iceberg, and then there was the irony that it was the maiden voyage and that it was supposedly, you know, unsinkable. You know, they made all these claims and all of that, and you know, it was like just this story of a tragic thing that occurred, you know, in history. But I didn't realize that there was a lot of, I guess you could say, conspiracy that surrounded the event, and there was a lot of different theories on what had actually happened. And like you, I didn't really know that until I had heard the absolutely brilliant episode that our friend Popeye had put together on the Titanic, and it really blew my mind. I was like, oh wow, I had no idea that there was so much more to this than well, of course there's more to it than what, you know, we've been taught or whatever. But I guess also maybe when you're a kid, it's probably hard to wrap your mind around a lot of the things that, you know, are actually, you know, I mean, because there's everything from possible insurance fraud. I mean, there's talk of that not even being the Titanic, and we'll get into that here in a little bit as well. You know, I mean, because the Titanic had a sister ship called, was it the Olympia? Was the sister ship, and there was a lot of, you know, there's a lot of stuff surrounding that, and then you got to talk about the players involved, the people who were supposed to be aboard the ship, the people who were aboard the ship, and their ties to things that were occurring at the time, and how what their, you know, their influence was. And it's an interesting and a kind of a deep rabbit hole to go down once we start looking into it. So yeah, it ought to be pretty good, man.
Absolutely. So NeSe, you're a man that definitely likes a bit of history. And the Titanic for you, when we first kind of said we were going to be looking into this week, what was your initial thoughts, man?
Well, of course, that blockbuster movie. Why could she not have just scoot over a little bit?
I know, dude. I love that movie, though, man. I love that movie. Yep. Nothing to do with Kate Winslet or anything like that. It's not my toxic side coming out. Okay, it was a lot to do with that. Leonardo DiCaprio's a limited actor at best, but it was a good movie, right? Good movie.
Yes, he was a pretty boy, and she was a very pretty woman.
Remember back in the day
And
when
it
that came
was
out, dude?
enjoyable.
It was like, remember that was like the height of special effects when they recreated the inside of the Titanic, and now you go and look at it now, right, and it's cringy. You're like, oh man, this was like the cutting edge. I remember saying this was like the bee's knees.
Yes.
Hey, you know, it was the 90s, and it was when CGI was first starting to kind of get its foothold into movies. You know, Jurassic Park kicked it all off with the dinosaurs, you know, and then from that point on, like Hollywood just went full gear with just CGI it, brother. We'll just CGI everything. And now, you know, when you look at it in 2021, you start to see the dating of the hardware, you know, or of the
Still a
the
brilliant
technology.
movie, though. Still a brilliant movie.
But
It was 84 years ago, and I still remember it like it was yesterday.
and then also where the whole thing was like, draw me like one of your French models, and that where that came from.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one thing, no matter what the movie is, when it's such a blockbuster, I always ponder, and I bring this up way too much. What is the outcome? What is the outcome? Where are the hidden messages? Are there symbols? Are there iconography? You know, within these movies, you know, and it was a time when people were trying to make their way to the new world, to America, to follow their dreams, to make things happen. And a lot of people don't realize this, but one of the main reasons people did that was for indentured servitude. And so when this ship went down, there was thousands of people that had contracts with businesses in the New World, America, that were coming there to be a workforce. And so these businesses lost a huge workforce.
Indeed.
So did somebody make money off those business failures?
And it's very possible.
Lords of London.
And I mean, it obviously shows, you know, you could see also in the movie, you know, the portrayal of the literal, you know, separation of classes on the ship, right? Like all of the lower class people were essentially packed down in the bottom of the ship in the most kind of, you know, crappy living quarters and all of that. And then all of the, you know, people in higher society and the people who had money were up in the luxury area of the ship. And it you know, it showed, and like NeSe said, you know, a lot of it was indentured servitude, which is just a sugar-coated way of saying they were slaves, right? I mean, that it was a way of slavery without having to use the word slavery, but they were essentially, you know, slave labor is what was on that ship. And so yeah, I mean, there was definitely somebody took a hit when their workforce didn't arrive on the ship, you know. It was like,
I mean, we're going to get into how you mentioned something before the show about the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of big money attached to this maiden voyage. There's the whole sister ship, which I find a really fascinating line of research as well. And then we're going to get there, folks, and then probably more theories, ideas, potentials on top of that. I'm going to take a look at just a couple of the quick fun facts, or some not so fun as it turns out, to do with the Titanic. And I'm sure as we go through this, it's going to spurn conversation along the way as well. So guys, feel free to throw a one into the chat and stop me at any time here, okay?
Well, this is good because this is the initial breakdown of kind of what the mainstream facts, a little breakdown, and then we'll just chime in if there's anything that seems anomalous
Yeah,
or
sound
weird.
good to you, Mr. NeSe? How does that sound, man?
The views and opinions about the Federal Reserves that are shared about Mr. Kev Baker are solely his and not regarding NeSe's opinions and views about the Federal Reserve.
That's it.
I have
Throw me
nothing to
under
do
the
about the men
Titanic.
of Jekyll Island and anybody
throw
else
me
that has
under
to
the
do with the banking
Titanic.
system.
Yep, throw me under the Titanic, why don't you? I don't know.
I love the banking system.
Just like that. Here
The
we go.
banking system's just fine.
Here we go. Now, NeSe, hold your fire. Keep your gunpowder dry, man. I'm sure there's going to be lots of powers that shouldn't be along the way here, folks. I know it. But listen, let's take a look at these. Not all 57 facts about the Titanic. I promise we're not going through all of them. But it says here, on April the 15th, 1912, remember it like it was yesterday, the Titanic sank and claimed the lives of more than 1,500 people. It says for the 107th anniversary of one of the worst maritime disasters in history, 24/7 Wall Street identified 57 fascinating facts about the famous ship. So we'll go through some of these here. Number one, the Titanic lies under, get your geometric calculators out, folks. There's lots of numbers here. The Titanic lies 12,600 feet under water. Oh, 621. That's the same as like that number that turns up on the earthquakes all the time. It's got 6.21 miles.
Yeah, I mean, 12 is 6 2 times, and 6 breaks down to 3.
3 goes into all of it. You see 369 again. We're all back, man. We're all back. The ruins of the Titanic lie nearly 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the ocean, approximately 300. What?
That's crazy. No,
Yeah.
I was just saying that's crazy to think about how deep that really is.
Approximately 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada. The ship broke in two, and the gap between the bow and the stern is about 2,000 feet in the seabed. I remember when they sent the cameras down. I think it was James Cameron that done the big one I'm thinking of. It's jaw-dropping when you see that. That no other way to call it but a watery grave, right? It's and to see it down there, it's weird. It's still weird to this day. Now I know right now it's still falling apart. We're on the verge of losing big chunks of it. How long it'll still remain there in any recognizable form, I'm not too sure. But remember when you seen it the first time when they got the ROVs down there? It's jaw-dropping, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to when we were talking about the movie, right? I mean, obviously, this was a passion project for James Cameron because he wanted to go down there, and I mean, he's big into this whole, ocean exploration, and trying to get to the Titanic and all of that stuff, and so, yeah, I remember that. Back when they found all that and everyone was like, oh, wow, because, I mean, up until that point, I don't think anybody had seen it, right? Who was the first? Who was the first to actually find the Titanic? I don't know. What was it, Cameron? I don't think it was Cameron, was it?
I don't think he. I think it was actually. Do you know who was a part of it? Somebody who was a part of it was Marty Klein. Remember the guy that came over from America to survey Loch Ness? I've done stories about him before. He sent the deep scan sonar down there. He was one of the pioneers of that technology. And I remember when I was researching him for the presentation I done Fringe FM, their online conference. He was part of the team that helped to locate the wreckage of the Titanic. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
MIT, if I remember rightly, Scott. Marty Klein is the guy's name.
I mean, but
I
you got to
thought-
think about how hard it would be to locate something like that that is located 2.5 miles down, and to just try and pinpoint its location and find it would be really, really hard. And then to have something to be able to go that far down. And
Yeah, big time. And just so people know, I'm not making that up. Is Marty Klein, known as the father of side scan sonar, is the founder and president of Klein Associates Inc., now Klein Marine Systems of Salem, New Hampshire. An MIT graduate, he was the program scan manager for sonar systems at EG&G. Now, they're really important because their name turns up when you start to dig into like the hidden UFO files and really like secret programs and things. But that aside, it says International, EG International, where he developed the first commercially successful side scan sonar systems. And it says Klein sonars have been used around the world to help find many famous shipwrecks, including the Titanic, the Atocha. So it's his system. I don't know if it was actually him per se, but I do remember reading about
either
that.
way, I mean, he built the technology that helped locate it. So
Yeah.
I mean, either way, I mean, very impressive.
Big time.
Yeah.
Do either of you remember Leonard Nimoy and In Search of? I think I remember him doing a Titanic show.
I remember the show, but I don't remember him doing that, NeSe. But I dare say that would be quite a good episode to catch, I would imagine. Back in the day. Yeah.
I think I vaguely remember something like that. We're from In Search of. God, that was a good show. In Search of.
It's back on now. It's got the guy that. This is the weird bit. The guy that does it now, I can't remember his name, but he plays Spock in the the remake.
That's why I always said that. I'm like, oh, they got the new Spock to do the new In Search of.
I think that's quite cool. I think the Matrix offered us up a little kind of nudge there.
Yeah. It's good too. But I love those old ones with Leonard Nimoy. I mean, I was like, because I remember watching In Search of, and then I remember watching Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Universe when I was young. Those two were like, I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm into the woo right now.
I would imagine anyone around our age would probably credit similar shows. I would imagine.
You're watching that kind of stuff as a kid, it's like you're unlocking areas of your brain, especially when you're a child and you're like your mind's more opened up.
I think that's when you should be looking at this stuff even more, because through those innocent eyes, I think ideas that would come from children looking at the kind of big questions we ask. We've got a way of looking at things. We don't look at it anymore,
I mean, because I remember watching stuff about the crystal skulls, and then I mean, obviously Arthur C. Clarke is this crazy futurist dude, and he's talking about concepts that are like way out, that are going to be way out.
Maybe a cargo of crystal skulls or giants on the Titanic. Can we throw that into the next NeSe?
Let's do it. Hey, let's do it.
Smithsonian done it, NeSe.
I would hypothesize that most of us grew up reading or at least looking at the Guinness Book of World Records, and we would come across like some strangeness, and then you knew where that section in the library was that had just all of those weird mysteries.
Dude, you're right. Yeah, man. Like your metaphysical, your kind of where your David Icke books used to reside, that corner of the library.
Right, but back when we were younger kids, because I remember getting like UFO books with photos and mysteries like that, and I remember the librarian used to like laugh at me, for checking out all of these UFO books and strangeness.
Yeah.
I was a weird kid.
I think we all were. I think we were all the weirdish kind of kids, were we not?
I was about to say, I think we were all weird kids because, like I said, In Search of Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Universe, and then like I would binge watch like the X-Files and Star Trek: The Next Generation, and weird sci-fi stuff.
I've always been that guy. No matter when I think about it now, like high school, into college, left the college, went to the army. But I've always been that kind of go-to guy where people, if there's something weird happens, or go and see Baker, go and ask Kev. He'll have an opinion on it,
Remember the old school 90s UFO documentaries and stuff that would come on. Like now it's like a dime a dozen, right? Like on the History Channel, because the History Channel is pretty much turned into the UFO channel.
It's Disclosure soft channel, man.
Well, but back then, like when they would run a special or something about UFOs or
Titanic week. They had that.
Yeah,
they had it like remember they went to the pyramid to open the chamber, and it was around that time that they had like a week-long shows going down to the Titanic.
And it was like a big deal when they would actually do a show on Woo or something. It was like,
well, ladies and gentlemen, the show is over. We have nailed it. It was the Smithsonian in the North Atlantic with an iceberg. We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. Oh, nearly, NeSe. You nearly got hung up on there, man. I don't know. Roulette,
It's the control that the dodo bird is utilizing because I outed
when
them.
they bring back the dodo, I'll be a happy man. I think the dodo should be reanimated. We must have enough DNA by now.
For some reason,
It's always
I don't know why. I don't know why it shouldn't. It shouldn't. But seeing that dodo.
Let me ask you a question, right? Did you know? And I didn't know this, right? This is a new one on me, but I think it was Nano Girl. Was it Nano Girl that showed us the dodo bird like skeleton that they've got? Was that on Nano's show when we had her on? That's new.
Yes.
I don't remember that thing, man.
I was about to say, look, it shouldn't unsettle me, but I'm kind of unsettled when I saw the dodo skull. I'm like, I thought it was
the dodo bird faked its own extinction, and they're controlling the whole world, dudes.
Actually, joked about that.
It gets weirder. Look, there's not just one, and there's one that's animated blue, which really worries me. That's like the blue dodos. That could be a whole new thing altogether.
Again, the news and views and the opinions of Kevin Bacon.
A rare
and the
dodo
birds.
composite skeleton goes on sale. Not only do we have them, we're selling them.
I love the dodo birds.
Oh, it's the Smithsonian are selling them.
Oh,
I
of
love
course.
the dodo birds.
Okay. Says here, rare dodo composite goes on sale. A British auction house selling one of only a dozen known dodo skeletons. Well, it's a dozen more than me and Scott and NeSe knew. Put together by a collector from bones of several birds. So is it really dodo bird bones, or is it just a hodgepodge composite? It's like one of NASA's pictures, dude. He's like just stuck together skeleton parts and they're trying to pass it off as a dodo. and it's the Smithsonian, so it could be like they could be hiding giants in plain sight, boys. It could be like
no comment about the dodos.
No comment. See, is there a big like, are they underground, Kevin? Is there a dodo comeback coming our way?
You know what? I used to profess that the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the miniature forearms, was a myth, and what they mistaken for the miniature forearms were actually what was being digested in its stomach at the time, and they actually had big forearms where they were more on 4 legs than they were on 2 legs.
Now we need to go back to the network. Hang on, here we go, guys.
That way they can grab us and eat us quicker.
Psychological just as much as they are physical. just as much as they are economic.
Nearly.
Almost.
5,
Hey.
10 Hey! What's a couple of seconds, you know? Here we
It's
go.
all right. There we go.
We talk to your
Yes, that there is the cry of the extinct dodo bird. Or is it extinct? We don't know anymore, Scott, do we? Because NeSe is, I think NeSe's got some secret information. He's got an insider that's told him that there may be dodos lurking. It was an inside job, dude. Crisis dodos. Where are we, man?
The conditions of me being on the show on Freaky Friday is that I did not talk about the dodo birds or Antarctica.
I know. I need to add that to my list, NeSe. My list's getting longer, man. Yeah. Now the audience are thinking, does Kev Baker really have a list? Nano Girl found out last week there's definitely cautionary warnings before we ever go on air. For any guest, Scott gets it every week, NeSe gets it every week, you know. I keep his algo right. That's what it is, boys.
But I can't confirm or deny that the dodo birds may or may not have faked their own extinction and are controlling the universe, the world, the continent. Okay, 3/4 of the continent. Maybe.
Look, you got to do what you got to do if you're going to play in the algorithms.
Algorithmic
playground,
Olympics.
right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Hey, the algorithm is the bully of this schoolyard, and you got to play by its rules.
And its
There's
rules
no-
are very vague at the best of times, indeed. So let's go back. Let's get our couple of fun facts, Scotty, and then we can start to peel back the layers, my friend. Peel it back.
Yes.
So here we go. Iceberg. The iceberg that hit the ship may have jutted out 100 feet above the water. The iceberg that the Titanic collided with is speculated to have been anywhere from 50 to 100 feet above water, and the entire iceberg is believed to have been 200 to 400 feet long. That, boys and girls, is, pardon the pun, a Titanic iceberg, indeed. How on earth did they not see this coming, boys? And again, this ship was meant to be the killer of all icebergs, right? No problem.
I mean, obviously not. You know, I can't remember this. I mean, you had the night watchman guy. They're supposed to be watching for icebergs, right? And wasn't it supposed to be foggy or something along those lines? And they didn't see it coming until the very last minute. They were just unable to, unable to steer away from it or whatever. But that's a big iceberg. I don't care how indestructible you think your ship is. That's going to do some damage, you know. And you got to figure, most of the iceberg is underwater. Only a very small part of it is actually sticking out of the water. So what you see on the surface is, only the tip of the iceberg.
That was much more of the tip of the iceberg.
Just the tip. Well, there is some out there that claim maybe not an iceberg. And I've seen this here today, and it says a Titanic survivor claims an iceberg didn't destroy the ship. So it says we all know from books and movies that the Titanic sank because of an iceberg. But there is some fresh evidence that says there were explosions and fires, and that those are what made the sink ship. This changes history. Let's check some facts that can shed light on these new circumstances. So it says here, Vaghinak Bayorat, that's Vaghinak Bayorat, was one of the brightest representatives of the very educated people of Constantinople at the time, and was planning a business trip to America where he had to take a large batch of books. This is why he bought his tickets for the Titanic. Now, he survived and saw the sinking of the Titanic with his own eyes, but his version is different. And it says,
Ooh, that's a
Chahen Chachaturian knew Vaghinak and interviewed him in person. He later wrote about the story of what happened to the ship, and Bayurat lived a long life and often talked about the sinking of the Titanic. The most interesting thing was that he never mentioned an iceberg. Instead, Bayurat would always talk about an explosion that led to the sinking of the ship. Now, this witness would probably have been blown off if other survivors hadn't also stepped up and talked about the explosions. Now, guys, I had heard that even before they set off, that there was allegedly a fire going in one of one of the rooms that kept the coal. Have you heard that's a thing as well?
Yes. Yep. In fact, me and my mom were actually talking about this the other day when she was watching the whole thing on the Titanic and a lot of the different sort of theories and stuff. But yeah, there was supposedly a fire that occurred down below. And some people believe that the fire could have weakened the hull of the ship or weakened the steel and made it more susceptible to something occurring. And that maybe it didn't even hit an iceberg. Maybe there was a failure of the hull while they were out at sea and or something along those lines. Now, when it comes to explosions, I don't know. There's other theories out there about a possible submarine attack that could have occurred. I don't know.
What do you make of it, NeSe? Have you got any info? Is that of your, like, do you know about the fire before it left?
I knew that there were many different angles that have been looked upon. The fire one, I don't recall about that one. I like the whole investment and the bankers and that aspect of it, and the potential of businesses that were on the precipice of being formed when some of these entities arrived in America. Mm-hmm. But the fires, I mean, because even if you think about the success of the Titanic to make this voyage, you know, supposedly one of the largest ships of luxury, and not only just the luxury aspect of it, but the extra things that occurred, you know, like the people below the decks, you know, so it was the potential of a new luxurious industry, which could have, you know, I was just pondering, we were talking earlier about the Hindenburg and how that was one of the luxuries of traveling across the Atlantic. So where is, you know, competition?
Well, we come down here. I've got a story about this here just to back up what we're saying. The Titanic was on fire for days before it sank. So it says here, most people know the story of the Titanic, as we've been going over. An unsinkable ship. At the time of its completion, Titanic was the largest man-made moving object on Earth. The company building the ship was so sure it wouldn't sink, they didn't include enough lifeboats for all the passengers. And of course, the ship wasn't what it was advertised to be and sunk after hitting the iceberg. It says, however, despite the century that's passed, the Titanic story is still evolving. Everyone knows the base story about the ship hitting an iceberg, but one major piece missing for years has recently come to light. The Titanic was on fire for days as it was sailing, and possibly longer than that. There was a coal fire below the deck, or a coal fire below deck for days that the crew was unable to put out. The ship sailed along anyway, with the fire burning in the hull. Senan Maloney, a journalist in Ireland, has been studying the Titanic for over 30 years, and he recently came across an amazing discovery hidden in an attic in England. A collection of pictures taken of the Titanic by the shipbuilding firm before it left the shipyard. And one of these pictures shows a 30-foot-long dark mark on the hull, right where the iceberg was known to have struck the ship. Engineers at the Imperial College of London determined the mark was caused by a coal fire that took place in the 3-story high coal bunker on the ship. And the fact that a coal fire was burning aboard is well documented. During the inquiry after sinking, Charles Hendrickson was brought up to testify and talked about the fire. The fire was known of before the Titanic left Belfast, and Hendrickson and 3 or 4 other men worked to put out the fire. But the only way to put out a coal fire in a bunker like this was to put the burning coal into the ship's furnace. Why couldn't they just put the fire out? Because of the incendiary material or incendiary nature of coal. In general, a coal fire is extremely difficult to deal with under the best circumstances, even with all resources in the world and a good deal of space to work. They can be near impossible to put out, and aboard a ship in tight quarters, it becomes even more difficult. So the whole fire thing, and there's a picture there, hard to tell with pictures, and they can be doctored, but it's interesting, definitely interesting, boys, that this might have been happening.
I'm not going to say Photoshop. I mean, the photo is from CBS News, I guess. You could say whatever about, but I mean, if it's been well documented that there was a coal fire on the ship, I mean, I would definitely have to say that would have to play some kind of a role. And also, should point out that coal fires on ships were actually fairly common back then, and they occurred a lot. But this sounds like it was a pretty significant coal fire that occurred. And like they said, the only way to really stop a coal fire on a ship like that is to just try and shovel as much of it, in as possible and just get rid of it, because it's going to be extremely difficult to put it out. You just have to try.
That was probably the plan. They probably thought, well, listen, we can try and contain it. And at the very worst, anyway, we just scoop it into the fires and we use it to get the steam going. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was the general protocol when that would occur on a ship back then. So, I mean, they were just kind of, but it sounds like this was a pretty significant fire that was occurring. And yeah, I mean, you definitely got to think about what kind of effect that would have on the actual structural integrity of the ship and that whole area,
And you can imagine, there's been a lot of pressure to sail. You've been building this ship up has been the bee's knees, the next kind of big thing. You better believe there would have been pressure on that company to have it set sail exactly at the right time that they said, no matter what was going on.
When there's that much heat,
one thing,
when there's that much heat up against the hull like that, I mean, it is going to cause some distortion and discoloration. So, I mean, I'm sure that photo is legit. That's probably what it would look like if you had a coal fire right on the other side of that metal like that.
So if there was a coal fire, because the way that ships are structured, they can flood compartments, because that's what they would do, especially if it got into like the coal bins. Because if they're set up like engineering is, it would have like a division of the coal where it wouldn't all be together in one, so it could be sectioned off, so it would be compartmentalized. So I would theorize that they were trying to drown out the fire and couldn't keep control of it, and so it over flooded. Or B, you would definitely be able to get away with an insurance claim if you hit an iceberg that was a freak of nature, as the story of we had a coal fire that went out of control and we sunk our own ship.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So let's see what this
And-
guy had to say. On you go.
Well, I was just saying, Luna in the chat was asking, if you heated something up and you got it cold, wouldn't it cause it to, tear and split? And yeah, I mean that's what would happen, if you heated up steel like that, and then you rapidly cooled it off, and you're creating a situation to where it becomes brittle. That's why you have to forge steel in a certain way in order to make it strong. But when you start playing with the temperatures like that, it's almost like when you heat up glass and you rapidly cool it, the glass is going to shatter. So I definitely believe if there was a fire on board like that, then something was the structural integrity of something was definitely compromised, at the very least.
Let's see what our friend with the funny name had to say about the explosions, because if there was a fire on there, then it could have led to other things happening. It could have been a series of events. And I do find it interesting that that area of the ship, that part that was pictured, the part rumoured to have the location of the fire, it coincides with where allegedly a big hole was ripped by an iceberg. Interesting. Does it prove anything? Not yet, but we're barely started. We've got other ships to throw into the mix, a whole lot of other stuff. But going back to the guy that said no iceberg, explosions. I said other survivors claimed that there had been 2 to 4 explosions on the Titanic. It's no wonder that in a panic they might have gotten the story twisted. Researcher and author Bill Wormstead also provided some evidence about this fact, which he learned from interviewing the survivors. Now, their claims could convince you to consider that it might not have been an iceberg. Number 1, Major Arthur G. Puchin, who was the first-class passenger, said that he definitely heard an explosion, and after that, the ship started to sink. George Frederick Crowe was a steward in a lifeboat. In his interview, he said that there had been an explosion and then the aft part had turned on end and sunk. But we still want to know if there is real proof that the Titanic sank because of an explosion. Well, researchers say the passengers could have survived, but the Titanic sank due to an enormous fire. Now, at the time, the Titanic engineers didn't understand the danger of the electrolysis that could convert seawater into explosive hydrogen gas. John Wickman included in his book Titanic, The Hidden Evidence, that they made a mistake. They kept the lights on, which caused the explosions. Had they not done this, the Titanic could have stayed afloat and the passengers could have survived. Now, Wickman believes that the first explosion happened between 1:10 and 1:20 a.m. in the morning. But he said that there was another explosion that splits the ship in half, and that was the reason for the catastrophe. So in a perfect match of extraordinary factors, journalist Seanan Maloney confirms this. He spent more than 30 years researching why the Titanic sank, and he came to the conclusion that fire, ice, and criminal negligence were the cause of the disaster. But still, the experts confirm that there was a fire, and it started in a 3-story high fuel store behind one of the ship's boiler rooms. Many passengers heard tearing sound, and after that, the ship began to flood immediately. What do you think was the real reason behind the Titanic sinking? And do you think that the passengers could have survived? Write your comments below. Intriguing. It's definitely worth keeping an open mind on the Titanic so far.
It's another angle to look at, And it just shows that, I mean, there's so many questions and so many different things that are swirling around this event. I mean, this is just another one to add to it, because I never really looked into the whole coal fire thing. I mean, I had heard that there was one. I just had no idea how significant the fire actually was. I didn't know that it had been burning for that long. I thought maybe that there was that they had a small coal fire and that they had put it out or whatever after they had set sail, and that maybe it had just did a little bit of damage. I had no idea that this thing was continuously burning and that they were trying to keep it managed, as they were sailing. So, yeah. Also, I didn't know. So they were doing electrolysis all the way back then in 1912.
So it would seem.
I get, yeah. I didn't know that they were employing that all the way back then, which is interesting. Yeah, if you were creating massive amounts of hydrogen gas or electrolysis, you would definitely have to pay attention to what you're doing with that hydrogen gas, well, and the oxygen as well. I mean, you're dealing with two explosive gases at that point. So, I mean, are we talking about another hydrogen explosion? It's interesting because we were just talking about the Hindenburg, right? And that was a hydrogen explosion. But no, I mean, if we're talking about explosions and stuff now, I mean, was it really an iceberg? Now that's the question. Was this really an iceberg that took it down?
The Titanic was just one of 3 ships, folks. You had the Olympic, I think you mentioned that earlier on, Scott. You had the Britannia, or the Britannic as well. I think it got turned into a ship for the war. If memory serves me correctly, it became like a floating hospital. But there's a lot of questions, shall we say, around that sister ship, the Olympic. And I've heard it being said that the Titanic, the one that sailed off that day, was not originally the Titanic anyway. No, it was the sister ship. You heard about this one then, Scotty, NeSe?
Yeah, this is the one where I think we start talking about the whole insurance fraud situation and how they swapped the 2 ships out in order to do this insurance fraud claim. I mean, I don't know the whole kind of background story of all of that, but it's a very interesting thing to look into. And I know that there's even some, when they go down there to look at the Titanic, with the ROVs and all of that, where it says Titanic, on the ship, it kind of looks like those letters were put over something else. So,
well,
I don't.
We've got a bit of it here. We'll take a look at this. This is quite interesting. It says the Olympic exchange hypothesis. One of the most controversial and elaborate theories surrounding the sinking of the Titanic was forwarded by Robin Gardner in his book, Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank? ? Well, Gardner draws on several events and coincidences that occurred in the months, the days, and the hours leading up to the sinking of the Titanic, and concludes that the ship that sank was in fact the Titanic's sister ship, Olympic, disguised as Titanic, as an insurance scam by her owners, the International Mercantile Marine Group, controlled by the American financier J.P. Morgan, that had acquired the White Star Line in 1902. And of course, we talked about him recently with Tesla as well. So
Yep,
Olympic
indeed.
was the slightly older sister of Titanic, although she didn't look it. Built alongside the more famous vessel, but launched in October 1910. Her exterior profile was nearly identical to Titanic, save for minor details such as the number of portholes on the forward sea decks of the ship, the spacing of the windows on the B deck, and the forward section of the A deck promenade on Titanic that had been enclosed only a few weeks before she set sail on her ill-fated maiden voyage. Both ships were built with linoleum floors, but shortly before she was due to set sail, J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of the White Star Line, inexplicably ordered the floors aboard Titanic carpeted over. On the 20th of September 1911, the Olympic was involved in a collision with the Royal Navy warship HMS Hawke in the Brambles Channel in Southampton water while under the command of a harbour pilot. The two ships were close enough to each other that the Olympic's motion drew the Hawke into her aft starboard side, causing extensive damage to the liner, both above and below her waterline. HMS Hawke was fitted with a reinforced ram below the waterline, purposely designed to cause maximum damage to enemy ships. An Admiralty inquiry assigned blame to the Olympic, despite numerous eyewitness accounts to the contrary. Now, Gardner's theory...
You know, it's always one of those classic cases of the military or the government. It ain't our fault. We didn't do that.
Hold that thought, folks. Hold that thought. We're going to be right back, and we'll get into more of the swapping out of the Titanic. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, this is the classic.
I'll be back in a sec.
This is the classic conspiracy that I really kind of have heard about the Titanic. So yeah, the Olympic had this accident with a Navy ship. It was damaged, and then supposedly the decision was made to swap her out and put her down for a little bit of insurance money. And so is this the one that you're familiar with, NeSe?
We have the right of life, USS, and the pursuit of happiness. Give me USS or death. USS. Yeah, this, that, the other thing.
Oops.
Oops.
An emoji coming up there. There
Just
we
happened
go.
to happen.
Coffee for Kev.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. Now that's a different emoji altogether. There's a different thing flying up on the screen because John used Streamlabs. Now, I don't know what NeSe is doing, but it sounds like he's blowing the whistle on the Titanic there. He's sending dogs mad around the world with that high-pitched whistle. But thank you, John. Much, much, much appreciated. And yeah, when we come back, we'll get into more of this other ship. I like the other ship theory. It's definitely worthy of looking into. It's interesting, if nothing else, you know.
This is the one that introduced me to the whole other, you know, what the conspiracy, I guess you could say, of the Titanic was the swapping with the sister ship for you know, for an insurance scam. And you know, then some of the other stuff too about how JP Morgan was supposed to be aboard the ship, but he canceled before, you know, and some of the other players involved. It's just very, very interesting.
Indeedy. Well, see the time. Nearly that time to go back. Now, folks, don't forget, you can jump from YouTube right here. You don't have to leave. You just have to go over to Paranormal Portal YouTube channel. If you want to stay on YouTube to hear him after today's Freaky Friday, or it'll be on over at tfrlive.com as well. We'll go back in just a second. Indeed, it's roasting in here tonight.
Subscribe.
Indeed, like, share, and subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. Definitely. 139 souls on board. boys. They're on board. It's the
Ah.
love boat. Don't panic. It's the love boat. We'll get you to your destination. We arrive at Freaky Fridays, Speculation Island, in about 90, I don't know, 2 hours, 120 minutes time. We'll be there, folks. We'll be there. Maybe, yeah. Let's see. I think it's that time. There we go. Wouldn't it be funny if the Titanic, when they pulled the kind of line to make the if it had been the of the Wookiee calling as it sailed out of port, that'd have been awesome, dude. All those thousands of people seeing it off, and then totally randomly just a cry of a futuristic hairy monster coming out of the four funnels of what might have been the Titanic.
That's some very, 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 I would say disturbing foreboding if that was the noise that was heard as the Titanic's.
I'm starting to think maybe if I did get my time machine, maybe a voyage on the Titanic. I mean, you take the time device with you, obviously, so you can get out of there right when it's time to get out. But at least maybe we're the people that make sure the band keeps on playing. Maybe it's a time traveler saying, "I'm telling you, I've read the books, guys. You keep playing. You stay right there. You play your music and just shut up."
Have you ever wondered, okay, what if it was a time traveler that actually caused it? You know what I mean?
Like he went through the hull of the ship. I mean,
yeah, like that.
Like a torpedo.
Like maybe he had the idea like you, right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna go back and see what happened to the Titanic.
What caused it.
Little do you know that you were the one that happened to the Titanic, right? You
see,
went
this
back.
is how I know. This is how I know, right? That time travel doesn't ever get created in my lifetime, because I've not had that experience that I would definitely give myself. I've younger Kev never had a stranger turning up that was me in the future, and I haven't ever lived that point in this timeline. So that tells me that I don't get the time machine before I leave this timeline, because if I did, as a wee guy, I'd remember. Oh man, I remember when I turned up at the bottom of my bed. You see what I'm saying, Scott? So that's how I'm not confident that time travel will be cracked when I'm here, because I didn't visit myself.
You would never be able to see yourself in this timeline, but you could probably see yourself.
You say that, right? We put all these rules on this time travel thing when we all admit that we've got no idea what time is anyway. But we're so constrained by the rules that we put on time travel that we don't know how to do anyway. I think we can just play with it.
Look, man, I'm engaging in theoretical physics.
Yeah.
Don't question me.
Yeah, again, it's built around something that we all argue we don't even know if it exists or not. Time. What is it? We're back here again.
Well, look, we can throw the whole time traveler blowing a hole in the side of the Titanic.
Flying time travelers. I think it'd be a good film, man.
Yeah, we'll throw that one into the mix as well. Why not? Might as well.
Maybe that's what took out the Hindenburg as well, man.
Oh,
see, it works. It holds true.
Maybe it has something to do with large amounts of hydrogen being located in one location. Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Time traveler turns up, that mist that we talk about ignited it, dude.
Hey, remember, it was supposedly fog.
Hindenburg, hydrogen, the letter H on today's day, when it's that day of all days.
What day of all days? I'm lost.
Dave's not here. So, is it
What?
or is it not the story we were told? Or once again, is it used for dastardly gains monetarily?
I am absolutely lost. I'm lost. I'm gonna just admit that I'm lost on our own show. Totally lost. No idea. I've gone from Dave's to days to I don't know, and then my head just exploded.
Dave's and confused.
Oh, gone. Totally daved and confused. Totally. Big time.
Do we have any more on the sister ship situation?
We do.
Okay.
Hang on then, we'll pull that up. It says that Gardner's theory plays out in this historical context. Olympic was found to be at blame in the collision, which according to Gardner, had damaged the central turbine's mounting and bent the keel, giving the ship a slight permanent list to port. Now, because of this finding, White Star's insurers Lloyd's of London allegedly refused to pay out the claim. White Star's flagship would also be out of action during the extensive repairs, and the Titanic's completion date, which was already behind schedule due to Olympic's return to the yard after her loss of a propeller blade, would have to be delayed. All this would amount to a serious financial loss for the company, and Gardner proposes that to make sure at least one vessel would be earning money, the badly damaged Olympic was patched up and then converted to become the Titanic. The real Titanic, when complete, would then quietly enter service as the Olympic. So the Titanic indeed had a list to port leaving Southampton. Inadequate trimming of cargo and bunkers would likely result in such, and the crew seems to have demonstrated a lack of proficiency on several occasions. A list to port was noted by several Titanic survivors, including Lawrence Beasley, who wrote in his book about the sinking. I then called the attention of our table to the way that the Titanic listed to port. I'd noticed this before, and we watched the skyline through the portholes as we sat at the purser's table in the saloon. Now, the dining saloon windows were double rows of portholes, covered on the inside with screens and leaded decorative glass with no clear view of the outdoors. Now, this was echoed by survivor Norman Chambers, who testified that after the collision, however, there was a slight list to starboard, with probably a few degrees in pitch, and as the ship had to list to port nearly all afternoon, I decided to remain up. Gardner states that few parts of either ship bore the name, other than the easily removed lifeboats, the bell, the compass binacle, and the nameplates. Everything else was standard White Star issue and was interchangeable between the two ships and the other vessels in the White Star fleet. While all other White Star line ships had their names engraved into the hulls, the Titanic alone had her name riveted over the top. And that's interesting. The Olympic had allegedly been damaged beyond economic repair. Gardner suggests that the plan was to dispose of the Olympic in a way that would allow White Star to collect the full insured value of a brand new ship. He supposes that the seacocks were to be opened at sea to slowly flood the ship. If numerous ships were stationed nearby to take off the passengers, the shortage of lifeboats would not matter, as the ship would sink slowly and the boats could make several trips to the rescuers. Gardner points to the length of the Titanic sea trials as evidence. Olympic's trials in 1911 took 2 days, including several high-speed runs, but Titanic's trials reportedly only lasted for 1 day, with, Gardner alleges, no working over half speed. Gardner says this was because the patched-up hull could not take any long periods of high speed. Perhaps this was due to the fact that the Titanic, as a nearly identical twin sister of the Olympic, was expected to handle exactly the same, or perhaps the Board of Trade inspectors were in on the scheme. Nearly there on this theory, guys, and then we'll discuss it. Says Gardner maintains that on the 14th of April, First Officer Murdoch, who was not officially on duty yet, was on the bridge because he was one of the few high-ranking officers, other than Captain Smith, who knew of the plan and was keeping a watch out for the rescue ships. Now, one of Gardner's most controversial statements is that the Titanic did not strike an iceberg, but an IMM rescue ship that was drifting on station with its lights out. Gardner based this hypothesis on the idea that the supposed iceberg was seen at such a short distance by the lookouts on the Titanic because it was actually a darkened ship. And he also does not believe an iceberg could inflict such sustained and serious damage to a steel, double-hulled vessel such as the Titanic. And finally, Gardner further hypothesizes that the ship that was hit by the Titanic was the one seen by the... But Gardner further hypothesizes that the ship that was hit by the Titanic was the one seen by the USS or the SS Californian firing distress rockets, and that this explains the perceived inaction of the Californian, which traditionally is seen as failing to come to the rescue of the Titanic after sighting its distress rockets. So Gardner's hypothesis is that the Californian, another IMM ship, was not expecting rockets but a rendezvous. The ice on the deck of the Titanic is explained by Gardner as ice from the rigging of both the Titanic and the mystery ship that she hit. As for the true Titanic, Gardner alleges that she spent 25 years in service as the Olympic and was scrapped in 1935. Researchers Bruce Beveridge and Steve Hall took issue with many of Gardner's claims in their book Olympic and Titanic, The Truth Behind the Conspiracy, and author Mark Chirnside has also raised serious questions about the switch theory. Oh, what do you think? The fact that the rescue ships, that was one thing even as a young guy, young boy, I used to think that was quite lucky that there was ships in that area, not too far away,
Yeah, you would think in an area of the Atlantic like that. I mean, I know that there was a lot of ship traffic and stuff, but to be, that close to other ships and all of that seemed very, very
handy.
Yeah, let's just say, I mean, still 1,500 people passed away, but by all accounts, for 1912. There were rescue ships and other things on the scene fairly quickly for that time. So, that's pretty interesting. Another thing I found interesting is it said in there that some of the survivors, right, had said that they noticed that there was the ship was listing a little bit, right, and that was supposed to be an indication of what had happened to the Olympic. After it had its accident, right, there was a list to it. So if they were noting that there was a list to the Titanic, then maybe it really was the Olympic. Maybe they did swap them out, and that these passengers were feeling the list of the Olympic because that's what they were actually on. I mean, who knows? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid theory.
What do you make of it, NeSe? What do you make of it?
Like Zowie, me and Scooby always get in the old fake switcheroo. Yeah, easily the bait and switch. It's an old game. Hide the shell.
Do you think there could be something to it then?
Yeah, and I did enjoy the fact that I brought up the whole banking system in Lords of London, and lo and behold, who did you bring up but the banks? I mean, I recall about a couple buildings that were so full of asbestos that the astronomical... so how would it be in the best interest of who? But definitely, like where it's coming from, especially if there's such similarities between the two ships.
Certainly makes sense if there's big money and insurance involved. Always, that's one thing I always look for when we're looking at any of these stories. Key bono. You know, who's going to benefit? And usually it's a good, wise idea to start looking at money trails. And I'm not saying that that proves anything, just because there could be a potential money trail here, Scott. But it's always one thing to keep in mind, you know, the why. I mean, is it logical that this could be a thing? And when you look at the money, insurance factor, stuff like that, like you said earlier on, or one of you said, it's a whole lot easier to start trying to get money back if it's a act of God or nature or something, you know?
Indeed. And it's really hard for people to prove something like that at that time as well. I mean, for forensics at that time was not, you know, there was, and look how far down that thing sunk. You know, any sort of evidence was going to be at the bottom of the ocean, and people involved would be long gone before anybody would be able to figure anything out. Another interesting thing is they were talking about the sister ships like the Olympic and stuff having their names engraved in the hull, right? Where the Titanic only had it bolted in or riveted in or whatever. And that's where I believe it was Popeye that was talking about those riveted letters are starting to fall off the ship, right? Over time, you know, they're rusting away and they're disintegrating. And I think he said you can see where where it says Titanic, it has fallen off, and underneath is the engraving because they've engraved.
Right? It's weird if they engraved every other ship. And I get it, right? People say, "Oh, Titanic was different. That's why they done it different there, and they put stuff on." And well, I don't know. It could have been to cover something up as well, you know.
If it was already engraved and they needed to do a quick swap out, then what are you going to do? You're just going to rivet over the top of it.
That's what I mean.
You know,
that's what I mean, dude. Yeah. Oh, did we lose Scott? Are you there, NeSe?
Am I here? I might be.
Yeah, you're here. Yeah. Okay, Scott's come back.
If you had a choice, would you rather have been in the Titanic or the Hindenburg?
Probably the Titanic, I would imagine. Yeah. Not that I've ever spent too much. Not that I've really spent too much. Probably it's the kind of thing you kind of think about when you're on the toilet. But no, I've not thought about that one. But probably the Titanic. Airships have never looked or appealed very. An airship, dude, it's not looking the safest to me ever.
When we were in the military, we had to go through basic ship repair for leaks and damage control.
Yeah.
And you would be in a flood room. And this flood room would have all these different situations, and you'd have to shore up the holes and the leaks and everything. And they would let this water come up to your neck. And when it starts getting up to your neck, you start getting a little freaked out. You start realizing when you're out to sea, it's one thing, you know. And then I imagine when you talk about the Titanic, and yeah, that's some crazy stuff to experience that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's we sit here and talk about it, but imagine actually being on a ship like that. You know, we see cruise liners today and things getting in trouble, but something like that, dang.
Something about being lost at sea, stuck in the ocean. I don't know. If I had to choose between the Titanic and the Hindenburg, you know what? I'm gonna say Hindenburg. Just get it done and over with, quick and fast. I'm not. I don't want to be aboard this thing for 2 hours while it's slowly sinking, and I'm gonna end up succumbing to hypothermia or drowning.
Well, we like a bit of woo, a bit of weird here, right? We've
Yes.
looked at coincidences and things like that in the past. We're talking about Titanic today, but there's another ship that we have talked about from that time period that's become rather infamous. With definitely me and you, Scott, we've talked about this before, but we've talked
Hmm.
about the Lusitania and how the Lusitania was pretty famous for in the world I come from. It was really the main reason why the Americans got involved with the war, right? Right?
Yep.
But of course, we've covered recently that that's not the case anymore. And now there's Black Tom Island, that disaster that happened when the Germans made it over to New York and done whatever. But did you know there's eerie coincidences and links between the Titanic and the Lusitania? Yeah, here we go. Let's take a look at this one, right? This is new on me as well, folks, so we're getting this together at the first time. It comes from Time, so blame them, not me. It says the eerie links between the Lusitania and the Titanic. So when the Lusitania went down 3 years after the sinking of the Titanic, the similarities were hard to overlook. Both British ocean liners had been the largest ships in the world when first launched. The Lusitania at 787 feet in 1906 and the Titanic at 883 feet in 1911. And both were ostentatiously luxurious, designed to ferry the world's wealthiest passengers between Europe and the United States in comfort and elegance. The difference, of course, was what sunk them. An iceberg for the Titanic on her maiden voyage in 1912, and a German torpedo for the Lusitania on this day, May 7th, 100 years ago. So it says, just before the Lusitania left New York, bound for Liverpool, German officials posted notices in American newspapers warning that any ship under a British flag, including merchant vessels and passenger liners, could be targeted as the war between the nations intensified. But not everyone believed the German Navy would follow through on the threat. Notable doubters included Winston Churchill and the Lusitania's captain, W.T. Turner, who told a reporter, "It's the best joke I've heard in many years, this talk of torpedoing. Ouch." Also among
Ooh.
the doubters were the 128 American passengers who passed, along with more than 1,000 others when the Lusitania sank, compared to roughly 1,500 people lost on the Titanic. Now, the lists of the people that passed from both vessels might have been ripped from the society pages. Among those who passed on the Titanic were Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to his family's vast mining fortune, Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's, and John Jacob Astor IV. Wow. Widely reported to be the richest man in the world. Lost on the Lusitania were famed Broadway producer Charles Frohman, fashion designer Carrie Kennedy, and millionaire sportsman Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt, who was on his way to England to lead the annual meeting of the International Horse Breeders Association. So the small world of the immensely wealthy created a number of eerie connections between the two doomed ships. Vanderbilt, for example, had been booked on the Titanic 3 years earlier, but didn't sail. Lady Duff Gordon, one of the most famous Titanic survivors, had a ticket for the Lusitania, but cancelled at the last minute for health reasons. That comes from the Smithsonian.com. Despite their similarities, however, the two ships were a sociological study of contrasts in the human response to imminent disaster. On the Titanic, women and children and the very wealthy were more likely to be saved during an ordered evacuation effort that followed the social rules of the day. And on the Lusitania, according to Time, chaos reigned and the fittest survived, winning the race to the lifeboats and flotation devices. I actually tend to think the Titanic was probably more like that. I think chaos would ensue. It's probably a nice story to tell people at the time that there was orderly lines. And I know as Brits we love to queue for things, but when the ship's going down,
I think
you know.
I think a lot of that part of it was probably embellished a little bit with, saving. I know it's horrible, but I don't think there were a lot of people that were. I think it was just kind of a frantic, chaotic thing, and anybody was trying to do what they could to survive at the time. So yeah, makes for a nice story, makes for a nice movie, but
it's on the Lusitania.
Probably was a little more like the Lusitania, I would say.
In the Lusitania, according to time, chaos reigned, the fittest survived. It would done that. Partly the difference had to do with the time it took the two ships to sink. Titanic passengers had a leisurely 2 hours and 40 minutes to sort out a system, while the Lusitania went down in only 18 minutes, meaning there was little time to advance beyond a flight or fight response, and we'll be back in 3 short minutes. Don't go anywhere. There we go.
And that would make sense too. I mean, given if you had if you knew the ship was sinking, but you had 2 hours, you could at least maybe try and formulate a plan and gather your thoughts. But if you only had 18 minutes, then yeah, that would probably be a far more chaotic situation. So.
But isn't it also a blatant disregard that the number of lifeboats they had was more so for the rich and the elite?
Of
even
course
though they did.
Of course it was. Yeah, I mean, they, like I said, that you literally had 2 separate classes of society packed aboard.
Expendable.
Yeah, they were expendable, and. Like you said, a lot of those people were in indentured servitude, and the only loss in a lot of the only loss in some people's mind was that was a labor loss. the company took a hit, right? Unfortunately, but
would either of you go into a submarine and go down there and visit it?
Ooh, would. I don't know. I actually kind of have I don't know. I know it sounds weird, but I would rather go into space than go down in a submersible. For some reason, something about going really, really, really deep into the ocean is kind of terrifying. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I have a fear of drowning or something like that, so it pulls upon that kind of.
I would do the sub thing in a minute. Oh, I'd do that. Yeah, that one's not too bad yet.
But look, okay, if I was presented the opportunity, just hey, I guess I would do it, because you couldn't turn. I couldn't turn down a once in a lifetime opportunity. I would put aside my fear to do it, because it would be cool. Yeah, I would like to see weird stuff down in the ocean and all of that. But always in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I really hope this thing can handle the pressure. Because
big pressure down there. Would you see, that's the thing though, right? If it didn't, it's gonna be quick, dude. It's gonna be like tin can quick,
It's the same with space too, right? If you're gonna have a rapid failure, you're not going to know.
Blink of an eye.
That's what Cooper.
Yeah.
William Cooper said it was just as easy to go into space as it is to go pressurized swimming in the ocean.
There you go.
Yeah. So there you go. If you think about it, there's so many similarities between the two. I mean, which is why they train underwater, and they're both essentially alien atmospheres that we can't live in. Or lack of an atmosphere, I guess you could say, in terms of space.
Yesterday, it stayed underwater for 20 odd minutes. Can't have held his breath, dude. I know. I know I'm gonna be doing it on a show next week. I think, man, needs getting into. It really needs getting into. Yeah.
So he held his breath for 20 minutes underwater.
And underwater breathing, and yeah.
Nice.
I think the main thing to that stuff is to try not to expend any energy. You have to be as still as possible under the water. Really, really. Yeah, that's cool that people have that.
There you go. Just people thought it can't be right. Diver sets world record holding breath for 24 minutes and 33 seconds, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
He
crazy,
broke
man.
his own record. Oh, nearly half an hour he was down there. Croatian Budimir Boda Sobat was already the Guinness World Record holder, but he fancied having an hour bash at beating his own record, which he did, setting a new time of 24 minutes and 33. See, folks, facts are stranger than fiction around here. Here we go.
Wild.
10 seconds.
Welcome back, ladies and gents. Yes, indeed. We're back. We're moving into the second half of Freaky Friday already. Can you believe that? 1.5 hours down, 1.5 hours to go. But it doesn't stop here after that, no, because Brent Thomas, he is warming up right now. He's probably combing Long Don Beard, or Don Longbeard's beard. Where did I get Long Don Beard? What the... Hey, dude.
What?
It's all going wrong. It's all going wrong, Scott. How you doing, man? We're moving to the second half. I'm still trying to get over the fact there's a guy in the world that can hold his breath for 24 minutes and 33 seconds underwater. What does he do? Does he, like, just power down? He must be having NDEs in the water, dude.
You would have to. I mean, to retain that amount of oxygen to where you can sustain yourself for 24 minutes without breathing. I mean, you saw the pictures. He was just floating face down. He looked like somebody you'd find in a river, right? Like, oh no.
You find him in a river, you're not even checking him for a pulse. You're throwing him in the back of a van and putting him in a fridge. And
he's found a way to put himself in a low power state. He's powered down into rest mode, man. That's what he did. He found a way to put the human body in.
That cryogenics company that we know about, they must be willing to pay this cat millions.
Yeah, they're probably on the phone. They're like, would you like to come to the facility? We'd like to do something.
Yeah. What's your trick, man? What's your trick? No.
Yeah. But hey, I mean, it's another example of how amazing the human body is whenever you push it to its limits. And
you think about, we're talking about the Titanic tonight. I mean, we all know about the lifeboat shenanigans. Not enough of them, obviously. But that water, you know, Loch Ness, if you fall in Loch Ness, it's not the depth you have to worry about, and it's definitely not getting eaten by any monsters. Although it might happen. But it's the cold. The North Atlantic, I mean, you fall in that water. I mean, you ain't got long in that water, dude.
You know, a lot of those people froze before they even had a chance to drown.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I would think the shock that the body would take, you know, hitting, you know, icy North Atlantic water like that, your body would just immediately go into shock, probably just shut down. I don't know. Yeah, it was it's a bad way to go.
You go from eating your prawn volley vons and doing a bit of the Charleston, the next minute, wallop, man. Oof, cold.
Yeah.
I've seen Leonardo DiCaprio, dude. He had icicles hanging off his nose. When he went
yes, he did.
Away, when he went for the eternal backstroke.
Well, here's let's get into a little woo here, Kev. Well, let's jump into this little
conversation. He faked the
conversation.
icicles. I think he faked it because I've seen him in many movies since then, dude. Many movies.
Do you think the area of ocean around the Titanic is haunted?
Oh, I would imagine, dude. I think that, like the sea is haunted, man. I think it's weird, right? You hear about like people that like work on the sea, you know, or they spend great time out there. There's stories that these people tell that like people that haven't been out at sea probably would never believe. You know, I think there's hauntings. I think there's beasties. I think there's things that are inexplicable. Water is amazing unto itself. We've talked about water before. Our planet's a water planet. We sometimes forget that because, you know, we tend to focus on where we are and we don't look at the planet on the whole. What is it? 70% water, something like that. And then
73% water.
and then you start to look at the kind of the memory kind of aspect of water, things about water that we probably don't understand. Yeah, I think to answer your question, Scott, very, very haunted. Yeah.
If you had any kind of trauma or emotional release or energetic release, spiritual release, whatever you want to call it, that occurred, that probably would get absorbed right into the water, right? And so here's the question. Do you think the ocean contains remnants or whatever? Well, I mean, you kind of answered it before.
Well, before you go there, right, you mentioned electromagnetic, didn't you? Well, that pulls me to another link I've had up for tonight. And this is really along the lines that we usually talk in NeSe. You're going to love this, but what if we look at the question of whether or not the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, had anything to do with the Titanic's demise? And do you know where we're going for this one? You boys are going to love me. We're going back to the Smithsonian. Yes, indeed. So it says, did the Northern Lights play a role in the Titanic's demise? They might hide giant skeletons. But boys, this website is full of absolutely brilliant material. It says, new study suggests that a solar storm that sparked the Aurora Borealis interfered with the ship's navigational and radio equipment. So, right, let's stop right there because that makes sense. That makes sense that would happen if there was a solar storm happening, right?
Yeah, if there was a huge CME or something coming in, there was a lot of a lot of solar activity wreaking havoc with the
just
magnetic.
the way that lightning and thunder would affect AM radio.
Yes, indeed.
Simple.
Indeed. That's the kind of stuff that starts to cause compasses to spin and do weird things, and any sort of sensitive navigational equipment is definitely going to be compromised by that. So,
Yep.
And hey, maybe we're talking about a series of unfortunate things that just continually stacked up. Solar storm, fire on the ship. You know what I mean? Like everything that can go wrong did
Just
go wrong.
A perfect storm of coincidences led to it.
Yeah, it was like a Murphy's Law situation, possibly, right? If we're going to take it aside from the conspiratorial and just look at any other, it seems like Murphy's Law kicked in and you just had like everything, the cards were stacked against that voyage.
Yeah, for some reason this was never going to be good. Never going to be good. Says
Or
here,
3 witches in front of their brew as they stew enchanted their spells for the failure.
there you go. Says the RMS Titanic sank on a moonless night in April 1912, but the sky wasn't completely dark. Instead, the northern lights shimmered green overhead, formed when charged particles of a particularly strong solar storm hit Earth's magnetic field, exciting oxygen and nitrogen in the upper atmosphere. The northern lights, or Aurora Borealis, illuminate the sky in a stunning display of swirling colours. As Mindy Weisberger reports for Live Science, the solar storms responsible for this light show can disrupt magnetic signals and radio waves. Such interference, argues independent Titanic researcher Mila Zinkova in a newly published paper, and it may have contributed to the luxury liner's ultimate demise. Writing in the journal Weather, Zinkova outlines evidence linking the Titanic's sinking to these celestial lights. Among these factors, she points out the solar storm's charged particles could have thrown off the ship's compass, placing it on course with the iceberg widely blamed for the disaster. And even if the compass moved only 1 degree, it already could have made a difference, Zinkova, who is a retired computer programmer, tells Hakai magazine's Chris Baranyuk. James Bissett, an officer assigned to the RMS Carpathia, which rescued 705 survivors from the sinking Titanic, described the April 14 light show in his logbook. There was no moon, but the aurora borealis glimmered like moonbeams shooting up from the northern horizon, he wrote, as quoted by Live Science. Now, 5 hours later, Bissett added that he could see greenish beams as the ship approached the Titanic's lifeboats. Another witness of the night's event, survivor Lawrence Beasley, later noted that the aurora borealis glow arched fan-wise across the northern sky with faint streamers running towards the pole star. And according to NASA, solar storms known as coronal mass ejections send a wave of electrified particles into space. So, irregardless of what caused it, guys, can you imagine that scene? You know, the ocean, quite still, from what I could make out from some of the reports as well. And then, you know, all that lights in the sky reflected on the ocean. It must have been very surreal.
I was about to say that would have been a very surreal sort of thing to witness. You know, especially if you were coming up on the Titanic, you know, trying to rescue survivors, or if you were one of the fortunate ones to be in the lifeboat or whatever and see the ship like, well, you know, like your picture right there, where you see half of it sticking up out of the water and starting to crack.
That's why I went for the colours today, because I'd been reading about that aurora borealis thing. I might have heard it before, but like you guys were saying, the navigation stuff, it's going to have an effect. And I'm not saying it caused it, but it may have hindered even some of the rescue attempts, right?
Well, it's just like what was mentioned in the article. Only a 1 degree change.
Big difference over time.
Yeah, if you plot that out over a long distance, 1 degree is a huge issue when it comes to navigation and stuff like that. So, just a very slight deviation, maybe they would have never even been in an area where there were any icebergs, you know, if the compass had been working correctly, right? You know, if we're going to go with the iceberg thing. So like I said, I mean, it just seems like the cards were stacked against the Titanic in every way possible. If you think about it, like it was doomed to fail. There was nothing else, you know? So yeah.
What are you thinking, NeSe, with the old aurora borealis going on? I don't think anyone's ever offered up the idea, the hypothesis. Maybe it was aliens, NeSe. Maybe it was aliens. I'm only joking. But aurora borealis, man, what do you think?
I have been fortunate enough to experience that many times.
Beautiful, isn't it?
My grandparents having a lake property on the south shore, and so it had a hill going down to the lake shore, and we would lay blankets on that hill, and just over the night we would watch that. Plus, I went up to Anchorage, Alaska on the ship I was on, so I really got some shows. So it is a spectacular experience. And when you look into the whole, you know, how it occurs, and from all the different lights is from all the different chemicals and how they burn and create a different spectrum of color, Yeah, and incredible. So being in such an extreme, I definitely could see it having an effect on the experience in itself.
Maybe if nothing else, NeSe, maybe like the guys that were meant to be on lookout, maybe they were that busy going, wow, ooh, looking at the lights.
Exactly.
Watch the water, guys. Come on.
Exactly. They're out there looking at the aurora, like blown away by the light show, and
Maybe they were blowing away on more than a light show. PPP, anyone? Hey, you never know. Bit of rum, bit of whiskey, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it's cold out there and you don't got all your foul weather uniform on and you're huddled and being
And
like, I don't want to be looking.
NeSe, I dare say these boys would have been more dressed for looking good than to actually deal with the cold weather conditions outside. You know, as long as they look good for all that money on board, guys, who cares if they're cold when they're out there on watch? I'm sure that was the attitude, you know?
And you gotta know those guys probably had a flask in their jacket or whatever, and was, hitting a little drink while they're running around.
Probably
all that
company policy, you know, if you're out there, keep warm, you know?
Yeah. Yep. So,
NeSe can't tell us because he'd have to take us out if he told us all the sailors' secrets, him and Joe Joseph, that they keep.
Arg, I can't reveal how we stayed warm at night.
Right. What if it was pirates? What if it was like time traveling pirates that came? Not too far.
You mean like just all of a sudden pirates phased in, like the Eldridge, right? But it was a pirate ship.
What was the Eldridge, man? Well, the Eldridge, I just called it Elvis Eldridge. What if Elvis went back there? That'd be even cooler, right? Oh, yeah. We're all shook up.
Yeah, what if it was the Philadelphia experiment? What if when the Eldridge phased out, it phased in right next to the
assume that the USS Eldridge came back. The bit that Al Bielek never told us was that people were fused into the Titanic. And that's what arrived back.
Hoover, could I be part of your... I got a hunk of burning love for your Eldridge program.
If we find out that Elvis was playing at any point on the Titanic, we know that the time machine's an option, eh? It's in play, boys. It's in play. Damn, I love it when we just talk about these topics. We've been going for 2 hours on this. We've only got to fact number 4 on the 57 facts. I bet there's people out there thinking, these guys will never be able to talk for 3 hours about that. Oh, who can't? Oh, yes, we can. But we've got the Hindenburg as well. Well, how about you guys educate me? Because this is definitely more of an American thing. You guys are way more clued up on this one than I am.
Well, I think NeSe probably knows more
We'll just defer to NeSe. Will we just like throw it to NeSe?
Well, I mean, he probably would know more about the Hindenburg.
Well, before we go, is there anything we can say? Is there any other like conspiracies out there, or any other ideas with the Titanic that we haven't gone over yet?
Well, there's the whole Federal Reserve thing.
Okay.
Right. And now I don't know the actual name of the players involved, but from what I understand, there was either a member of Congress or a senator or something like that.
Guggenheim, one of the ones I mentioned. I think he's one of the ones. But look at this. How about we go to the Jesuits in Britain website?
Oh.
Jesuit.org.uk.
Hey.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, I'm going to be bookmarking this one for future shows. Don't you worry, folks. Dang. So, yeah, IHS Jesuits in Britain. Before we go here, let's just see what it says about us here. Founded almost 500 years ago by St. Ignatius of Loyola, the Society of Jesus is a missionary order of priests and brothers, aka the Jesuits, who are present in every corner of the globe.
That's ominous.
Not at all, isn't it? They draw on the rich tradition of Ignatian spirituality and reflection, sharing this with others to help them discern God's will for their lives. Jesuits are contemplatives in action, who live in a community as compassions in a mission of reconciliation and justice. Jesuits work in many different roles: parish priests, teachers, doctors, spiritual directors, lawyers, writers, artists, astronomers. They're everywhere. In all spheres, the Jesuits are grateful for the partnership of countless others who share with them in the service of the mission. Oh boy, I thought it was going to say the plan, including Christians of other traditions and people of other faiths and of none. In other words, folks, they'll work with anyone to get the job done. The Jesuits are the largest Catholic order of men in the world. Oh boy. Are they ready for the woke world? That's going to have to change. You need to open your doors and embrace diversity, my Jesuit brothers. In the world, and their headquarters are in Rome, under the Vatican. Close to the Vatican. Pope Francis is the first Jesuit pope.
I thought that was supposed to be a bit of a no-no.
What?
I thought the Pope wasn't supposed to be a Jesuit.
Oh, that was one of the controversial things about when this boy got the job. Yeah, fully professed.
I like how this Jesuit Order of Britain it's very nefarious sounding the way that they. I mean,
it's good. It's
I
good,
like
man.
the way they're like. We're located all over the world. We're embedded. We're everywhere. We're doctors. We're scientists. We're the janitor cleaning your local school.
Indeed. It says fully professed Jesuits take 4 vows. The 3 customary vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, plus a 4th vow of trust in the plan, of obedience to the Pope, specifically in regard to worldwide mission. The 4th vow reflects a dedication to the service of the universal church and the greater good, and it means that Jesuits are ready to accept whatever mission the Pope gives them. And today their mission is to teach us more about the Federal Reserve and the sinking of the Titanic. So it says here, there have been a number of conspiracy theories which originated in America and accused the Jesuits of schemes against the US government. Perhaps the most bizarre of these concerned the conspiracy to sink the Titanic. You see, the Jesuits and a group of US financiers supposedly plotted the sinking in order to do away with certain enemies to their scheme to set the Federal Reserve. These included Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor, who all perished, unfortunately, on the Titanic. There was a 32-year-old Irish Jesuit scholastic on board the Titanic. He had been given the present of a ticket by a relative to travel from Southampton to Queenstown, Ireland. Famously, he took many photographs in his short time on board. And according to the theory, Brown was the Jesuit master of Captain Edward Smith. He was the captain's handler. Also in on the plot, and commanded him to sink the ship by driving it into an iceberg. Brown had been invited to remain on the ship to New York as the guest of some American passengers, and his request for permission was met by a telegram saying, "Get off that ship, provincial." Oh, conspiracy theorists suggest this demonstrated wide knowledge of the plot among Jesuits. They also offer in evidence the fact that the Federal Reserve was successfully set up in 1913. They also suggest that the outbreak of the First World War in 1914 was the culmination of our dastardly plans, for which the funds supplied by the Federal Reserve were a necessary prelude. Surely being the Jesuits is unlimited funds coming out of the Vatican vault, right?
You know what? There may be something to this, Kev. Because why did
the fact that they're going to such lengths to cover it up, they just protest too much.
Yeah, I mean, why did they feel it necessary to come out and so vehemently rebuff this conspiracy against the Jesuits?
What do you make of this one, NeSe? I'm sure NeSe's sitting there. He'll be choking again on this one. What do you think, dude?
The views and opinions by the other two hosts, Scotty and Kev, do not reflect upon the views of NeSe, has no challenges with the Jesuits or with the banks of any universal causation. They're okay with me.
Yep. Yep. Read into
Dude,
that what you believe, folks. Read into that what you believe. Now, it says at the end of that, you must pause for prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, the Jesuits want you to pause for prayer. Nice, nice. So we've got 1 hour left to go, and I've just freaked out the Freaky Friday panel. Who knew that the Jesuits would be our go-to to clear up that dastardly rumour that they might have had anything to do with handling Captain Smith?
Did you say goat too?
Yes, the goat too.
Bad choice. Bad choice.
In their Jesuit order, right? Their little Jesuit order over there, running the website. They're like, you know what? We really, really, really need to clear the air about this whole Titanic situation. This is getting
Before
this
that
is getting
Freaky
out of
Friday
control.
mob. We've heard Freaky Friday are going to be talking about this. We need to get an article out now. That's it, dude.
We need to preempt this.
Yeah. Well, when we come back after the breakdown, we'll get NeSe to give us a lowdown on, is it the Hindenburg? Is that where we're going after the break, boys? Or we're going to visit that one?
If he wants to go there, I mean, I don't know of any crazy conspiracy surrounding that.
I don't know
but I'm
much
sure
about it at all, to be honest with you. So
I just remember it was the event that would live in infamy.
for those who know
find out
about it,
after the break.
yes, indeed. We'll be right back. 1 hour to go on your Freaky Friday. There we go. 1 hour to go. Woo! That's been a quick 2 hours, man.
it has.
When was the Hindenburg? Was that 1912?
Nah, that was in the 30s, I believe. 20s or 30s.
1937.
1937, in between the two wars.
Because it was right before the Second World War.
Yeah,
Because
a couple of years before it.
the Hindenburg was donning the symbol of the bad guys in World War II.
Yep.
So it was when they were gathering power in Europe at the time, right before they invaded Poland. And they still had relations with the U.S., hence why the Hindenburg was flying back and forth, and because we weren't at war with them at the time.
Dang, Scotty knows more than I do about this. I just remember as a little kid watching that black and white video.
Yes,
And the guy
sorry,
just-
NeSe, sorry. Algo says, shout out to the YouTube chatters, except for Algo, because he's been lurking. Yes,
No.
it's a constant shout out to the YouTube audience. I know I'm terrible, Scott. I keep forgetting that we're live here during the breaks and we get involved in conversation. And I'll come and pay some time or take some time with the chat room after we finish. How's that sound? How's it sound? I think that's sounding quite good. Here we go.
Indeed.
Awesome.
You've got to give the people their daily dose of dopamine. You got to give them the 3 Ds, the daily dose of dopamine.
Sorry,
So-
dude. Sorry, I thought it was urgent messages coming in there. Always got to check. There he is.
It's
Jimmy
a-
Jeans into the strike zone has sneaked in there. Look at him.
Into the strike zone.
Into the strike zone.
James Jean. Oh, yes. Known
name
as
is
23 and me to his friends. Jimmy Jeans. Yeah, Jeans. Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho.
The man that
Green's
launched
giant.
The man that launched 1,000 jokes. Yes, indeed.
Mm.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We day off tomorrow. No streaming tomorrow, but I'll be back on Sunday with a members stream over on KBS2. So that's the other channel, KBS2. Head on over there. You'll find the community tab. Keep your eye on that. I'll put the link up for that tomorrow. And then also on Sunday, Bill Bean. On Monday, Nano Girl. On Tuesday, Charlie Robinson. On Wednesday, Jimmy. And on Thursday, Scott, if you can make it, we have got Evan and Stephen Strong all the way from Australia. So that's more of like, I kind of just give it over to those guys and I throw the odd question in. So you can come and hang with me if you want, Scott, but at the same time, if something comes up, don't you feel pressure to go out your way, you know?
I think those Australian guests that you get are absolutely amazing. So
Yeah.
I would probably be what we call a slippers.
Oh, absolutely.
Coat and
Yeah. Last
episode.
time, after the first segment, I kind of just let those guys take it where they needed to go. But here we go, folks. Here we go.
Yeah.
1 hour left on Freaky Friday, and we've been getting into the Titanic. Woof. Oh, well, a lot of Titanic talk there, a lot of things for people to think about. I hope there was something in amongst all that you didn't know, that you hadn't heard before, because that's always the good bit when you listen to stuff like that. You think, oh, didn't know that, and you go and check it out, and it's a good little rabbit hole, you know?
It is. It's a good one, and there's not just one theory either. That's the kind of a cool thing is there's different angles to it that could have possibly played a role in what happened. You know, we have the fire, we have instrumentation that could have been thrown off by an aurora borealis. We've got this insurance scam that possibly the White Star Lines was trying to pull because of the accident that the Olympic had.
And it could have been exactly as it says on the tin. You know,
could have been exactly how it played out. Like maybe it was this Jesuit plot, Kev.
I think we do that a lot, though. You know, I think I personally have done that a lot. Maybe I can't talk for anyone else, but I know when I was deep down the rabbit hole, like a few years back, there was like I couldn't look at anything without trying to find holes in the story. Or being determined that it couldn't be the way we were told, just because if we were getting told that way, it must be there must be something wrong. But yeah, that can be the case. It can be the case. But you know, when I look back now, I think to myself as well. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we can't get distracted from the fact that it could actually be just the way that we're told as well. You know.
Well,
No,
one thing that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
One thing that I would throw out there when I look at these events that occur, one perspective is if it was orchestrated, how would the powers that should not be utilize it for more power and control? But I will also look at it that I do not think that the powers that should not be would let any catastrophe go to waste if it also could be manipulated for their agenda.
That doesn't mean that they do it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I thought you were. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's exactly where I'm going, because there are also times when things just occur.
Exactly,
dude. Exactly.
Yeah, and it could have been just another case of don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? You had these people go down on the Titanic that may have, been involved with these talks about the Federal Reserve or preventing it from, that could have prevented it from going through. But hey, they went down on the Titanic, and the powers that shouldn't be are like, hey, wow, that was really, really convenient. Let's milk this for what we can. It's just like we see today. Just because an event happens doesn't necessarily mean that it was, that it was planned and all of that. But they can take advantage of those situations as well. So, NeSe brought up a excellent point there, and I think that's where we're all at right now, is where just because an event happens doesn't necessarily mean that there's some kind of a deep conspiracy behind it. And sometimes there are, yes, but sometimes there's not. So no, but I
Hindenburg.
think it's cool.
And
And when it comes to the, oh, sorry,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
on you go, man.
No, I was just gonna say, and when it comes to the Titanic, I mean, yeah, you're right. Maybe it did play out the way history told us. Maybe it did happen that way. And um, maybe the powers that shouldn't be just happened to benefit from it, or maybe there was a little more going on. Maybe there was a little bit of a deeper conspiracy. But hey, that's why we did the show, and we threw it all out there, and let the audience decide what they want to kind of which theory they want to go with on it.
Sounds like a plan, dude. Sounds like a plan. So when we look at the Hindenburg, now this is like most of this is going to be entirely new to me. Not something I've looked into, man, at all.
Wow.
So it says the Hindenburg disaster was an airship crash that occurred on May 6, 1937, Manchester Township, New Jersey, in the US. German passenger airship LZ-129 Hindenburg caught fire and was destroyed during its attempt to dock with its mooring mast at Naval Station Lakehurst. Now, the accident caused 35 fatalities, that's 13 passengers and 22 crewmen from the 97 people on board, 36 passengers and 61 crewmen, and an additional fatality on the ground. The fact it was only just one on the ground is actually quite surprising, the size of the thing. The disaster was subject of newsreel coverage, photographs, and Herbert Morrison's recorded radio eyewitness reports from the landing field, which were broadcast the next day. A variety of hypotheses have been put forward for both the cause of ignition and the initial fuel for the ensuing fire. The publicity shattered public confidence in the giant passenger-carrying rigid airship and marked an abrupt end of the airship era. And I think one of the most interesting things, Scott, was what you said before the show. And that is, back then, pre-World War II, we were flying things around in the sky. They're massive. They're huge. You know what I'm saying? We're not even doing that today,
Exactly. Yeah, I was talking to Kev about this before the show. People, like, it's mind blowing to me that in the 30s we had these gigantic airships flying around, and like there's nothing like it that we have in the sky today. I mean, these things dwarfed a lot of the aircraft that we have. We had these gigantic floating airships. It's just crazy to think about. And then after the Hindenburg, that was it, but the question is, was it really it? I would think that technology was still being utilized. And me personally, I think that, I mean, yeah, sure. We have blimps, like the Goodyear blimp and stuff like that, but they're much smaller dirigibles, right? And they use helium, and they're not making anything nowhere near the size of what I think. There's like only one kind of a new airship design that they're trying to develop right now, but I think they've continued to utilize that technology. They just pulled it away from the public sector, I guess you could say, and they started utilizing that for more of like military applications and probably black project stuff as well. I think that would explain some of the cigar-shaped UFO sightings that people have seen throughout the years. I think we're talking about gigantic airships that are being flown like in the upper atmosphere, because I think that was the main goal of a lot of these airships, was to get at a high enough altitude to where they weren't even affected by winds, right? They're flying above, and so it was like smooth. It was a smooth ride to where they needed to go. But yeah, I don't know, man. Go ahead.
So one thing that I used to have a dream about, and it freaked me out when I saw it on Star Wars when they had the Clone Wars, and they went to that planet, and in the water, it had those kind of old style Christmas ornaments where it had like the two spires at the top and the bottom, and it was kind of like in the water, but then the big round, the round part of it was above the water. So I used to have this vision, and I think I got it from the Jetsons, the way that their towers were also, but they were like hovering Christmas ornaments that hovered right at the upper atmosphere. And they had like gliders that you could get into, and they would launch them and drop them. And you could go up to these huge floating like cities, and it floated around the world every so many hours. And you could go up there for like 4 or 5 rotations, and there would be like malls and restaurants up inside this thing.
I think that technology exists, to be honest.
Yes.
I think, ever since the quote unquote end of the airship era, like I said, I think that technology went into more kind of black project development, maybe even kind of a breakaway civilization kind of thing. And that they do have the ability to make these gigantic airships that fly kind of in the upper reaches of the atmosphere, and they just, like you said, they just spin around the globe up there, and it could be solar powered because they're above any sort of cloud features. They have a constant supply of solar energy and things like that. So I don't know, man. Now, as far as going back to the Hindenburg, there's a lot of talk like what caused the explosion. I think the main theory is that it was a spark of static electricity that arced across, detonated the hydrogen, caused the explosion. I think I've heard some theories of possible sabotage as well, because of things were starting to get a little more tense between all the countries, leading up to World War II. And so there's that. I would also be interested in looking up who was aboard the ship. That'll have to be something for me to do later, but were there any, I wonder if there were any noteworthy passengers or prominent people on the Hindenburg that, if they were to pass away or whatever.
From looking at it, no.
No? Okay, well, I don't know, but either way, it was a very significant event, at least here in the United States, and kind of globally. Like I said, it was that famous newsreel footage, the radio broadcast, all that. It put an end to the whole airship thing. People didn't want to go on airships anymore, or that perception was put out there. So
that there is where I would put, some of my focus on it, is what it did for the new newsreel, where, we're now having theater and we're having movies. And in between the movies, they would have those new reels from around the world, news from around the world.
It did. It did demonstrate the power of, I would say, broadcasting an event like that to a massive amount of people and swaying people's perception about something. All they had to see was one airship exploding, and it made like everybody not want to go on airships, or put that vibe out there that, that's it. we're not making these anymore. We're not doing this. And then on top of that, with the harrowing, radio commentary, where the guy's like, "Oh, humanity," right? That's a famous line that has been etched in society ever since. Anytime something's happening, somebody's like, "Oh, the humanity," that comes from the whole Hindenburg thing. So yeah, I guess from that aspect, NeSe, like from a media standpoint, it had a major effect on people. Also made a good album cover for Led Zeppelin.
Definitely a good album cover. Says here there's a sabotage hypothesis. There's always sabotage hypothesis.
That's what I'm saying, that there was sabotage hypothesis. That's the one. That's the main one.
Like a sabotage.
Yes.
Sorry.
So it says at the time of the disaster, sabotage was commonly put forward as the cause of the fire, initially by Hugo Eckener, the former head of the Zeppelin company and the quote, old man of German airships. In initial reports before inspecting the accident, Eckener mentioned the possibility of a shot as the cause of the disaster because of threatening letters that had been received, but did not rule out other causes. Eckener later publicly endorsed the static spark hypothesis. Now, at the time, on a lecture tour in Austria, he was awakened at 2:30 in the morning, and that's 8:30 p.m. Lakehurst time, or approximately an hour after the crash, by the ringing of the bedside telephone. It was a Berlin representative of the New York Times with the news that the Hindenburg exploded yesterday evening at 7 p.m. Above the airfield at Lakehurst. And by the time he left his hotel the next morning to travel to Berlin for a briefing on the disaster, the only answer that he had for the waiting reporters outside to question him, or the reporters waiting outside to question him, was that based on what he knew, the Hindenburg had exploded over the airfield. Sabotage might be a possibility. However, as he learned more about the disaster, particularly that the airship had burned rather than actually exploded, he grew more and more convinced that the static discharge, rather than sabotage, was the cause. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen when you think about it, really, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good idea loading gigantic amounts of hydrogen in, these giant bags of hydrogen inside of a metal tube, if you will, or a metal frame exoskeleton. That is a recipe for disaster. They should have used a different gas, went with helium or something like that. But hydrogen was much easier to produce, so that's what they went with. And no, I mean, it was bound to happen at some point. There was going to be a disaster like this. So, but like I said, the technology didn't go away. I don't think they just said, "Oh, well, airships don't work anymore," because they obviously do. And like I said, we have modern dirigibles, with helium and stuff like that. But it just makes me wonder what they really can do with it, with that technology, like with the whole flying airship thing. Like if we were to actually see or utilize what we're capable of, what could we actually create, or what actually exists? I think it'd be way, way crazier than anything we could imagine.
Well, we've got another little theory here. It says in 1962, A.A. Holing published Who Destroyed the Hindenburg, in which he rejected all theories but sabotage. and named a crew member as the suspect. Eric Spell, a rigger on the Hindenburg who passed in the fire, was named as a potential saboteur. 10 years later, Michael MacDonald Mooney's book The Hindenburg, which was based heavily on Holling's sabotage hypothesis, also identified Spell as a possible saboteur. Mooney's book was made into the film The Hindenburg in 1975, a mostly fictionalized account of the Zeppelin's last flight. The producers of the film were sued by Holling for plagiarism, but Holling's case was dismissed because he had presented his sabotage hypothesis as historical fact, and it is not possible to claim ownership of historic facts. So he says Holling claimed the following in naming Spell as his culprit. Spell's girlfriend had communist beliefs and anti-bad guy connections.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that'll do it. The fire's origin was near the catwalk running through Gas Cell 4, which was an area of the ship generally off limit to anyone other than Spell and his fellow riggers. Holling's claim that Chief Steward Heinrich Kubus told him the chief rigger Ludwig Knorr noticed damage on Cell 4 before the disaster, and rumours that the Gestapo had investigated Spell's possible involvement in 1938. Spell's interest in amateur photography, making him familiar with flash bulbs that could have been served as an igniter. The discovery of representatives of the NYPD bomb squad of a substance that was later determined to be, quote, likely to be, quote, the insoluble residue from a depolarizing element of a small, dry battery. And Holling postulated that a dry cell battery could have powered a flash bulb in an incendiary device. The plot thickens. The discovery by the FBI agents of a yellow substance on the valve cap of the airship between cells 4 and 5, where the fire was first reported, and although initially suspected to be sulfur, which can ignite hydrogen, it was later determined that the residue was actually from a fire extinguisher. It says a flash or a bright reflection in gas cell 4 that crew members near the lower fin had seen just before the fire. So Holling and later Mooney's hypothesis goes on to say it's unlikely that Spell wanted to harm people and that he intended the airship to burn after the landing. However, with the airship already 12 hours late, Spell was unable to find an excuse to reset the timer on his boom boom. It has also been suggested that the ultimate bad guy, Big A himself, ordered the Hindenburg to be destroyed in retaliation for Eckener's anti-bad guy opinions. There you go.
Oh.
Definitely, there's a lot of intrigue, shall we say, around this, man.
There is.
Got everything you need. You've
Uh,
got an event. You've got bad guys from World War II. You've got dodgy yellow substances turning up. All we need is a magic passport, and we've got everything. If we can find a fully intact passport there, I'm calling shenanigans.
Look. If the bad guys from World War II are involved, there's immediately going to be some kind of
Shenanigans.
secondary. Yeah, there's going to be some kind of a secondary hypothesis or theory. That just comes with the territory when you're talking about those characters. So, no, it's possible. It's possible.
I think they were bringing a map to locate the Ark on Oak Island.
Oak Island, man. Have you boys been keeping up to date with the latest season of Oak Island? Have you?
No.
Lopez. In fact, Lopez, I think I'm going to have to instruct you. Me and you might not be able to talk again until you do that. I'm just going to have to put the foot down and say, you need to watch this, Scott. You and your mum, you're going to be blown away, man.
You're dropping the anchor on this, aren't you?
Yeah, Scott, I don't recommend. You'll know, dude. I don't come to you like every day with like video links or check this out, check that out. So big man, if I'm telling you this needs to be checked out, oh man, it's like wow. This season alone, it's like taking it to new levels of woo, dude. New levels of woo.
I think it's the only show where it's like every season has been getting better and better. Like there really hasn't been as like, when are we gonna run into the season like where they don't find anything? You know what I mean? Like,
it's gonna be a spaceship down there, dude. I'm telling you, it's a crash spaceship they're gonna find.
dude, can you imagine? Like they get to the bottom.
That's the point where an episode finishes with black helicopters coming in, SWAT teams arriving, and a big message saying History Channel will no longer be airing any future episodes of Oak Island.
That's the point when we don't see that episode, because that will
Portal.
not make it.
Down there to the right, a portal.
There you go. Yeah.
See in the
Algo,
chat
our
room.
friend Algo says that they usurped hydrogen production with Hindenburg in favour of the gasoline. There was many hydrogen cars back then. It's funny, I was looking at pictures today of cars in the late 1800s that were plugged in and charging on electricity as well, dude.
Yes. Electricity was the big thing back then, and the oil companies didn't like that. No, Algo makes a good point about the hydrogen.
We'll be back on the other side, ladies and gentlemen. It was the bad guys with hydrogen at the airfield. There you go. We'll be back on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Oh, that was nearly NeSe there. I had to come off it quickly. I had to come off it real quick. So what you got planned for the weekend, Scotty? What's on, apart from Oak Island? And the show I done with Lon Strickler. In fact, you could probably watch that and it'll bring you up to date on this season.
Apart from the weekend that Kev has planned for me.
I have planned. Listen, if I was over there, we would be in Kansas, which would be very weird for me anyway. I'd tie you down. I'd actually force you, like Clockwork Orange style, force the eyelids open and everything to get Laginaed. Yep.
Hey, Kev's going all sadistic.
Brainwash people with woo, Scott. Woo works the best, man. Yeah.
Can I get pictures of when you tie him down?
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. I might even stream it live. But that'll be on my OnlyFans page that I don't have yet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This took a turn for
a real weird turn, didn't it?
I don't know if I want to part of any of these weekends.
I don't think anyone really wants to see me gimping you up in a room, making you watch Oak Island.
Took a turn for the woo.
But then again, I didn't know that there was people out there that would pay good money to watch other people fuffling and farting, and yet there is. So who knew? Scott, maybe there is a market for us yet.
Hey, whatever tickles your pickle, you know?
My mother was absolutely, I don't know if she was shocked or actually mildly proud that there was fellow people out there that were so obsessed with flatulence. Who knew, Scott? Who knew? Certainly my mother didn't, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told her good money to be made. Good money to be made out of a posterior that can play a good tune like that.
Yep.
There is.
There's a demographic for everything, my friend.
Nothing new under the sun, and there's something for everyone. It's the two rules that hold fast, dude. Hold fast. Yes, indeed. So what's your plans for the weekend, NeSe? Dare I even ask? I knew she would message. I knew if I started talking about her farting antics, I would get a message. All I get is laughy face. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, NeSe, come on, man. Tell me you're doing something interesting this weekend to end my flatulence hell.
Yes, I am going to convert to paleo paleo, what would we call it? I don't know. I have to come up for a new title of the religion. I'm going to convert this weekend.
Okay, you're going to make a religion and convert it? That is super cool, dude. That is awesome. Awesome.
Born again pagan.
Well, there's your question on is NeSe going to have an interesting weekend? Oh, yeah, no, I'm just going to come up with a religion and convert to it.
I know what we're going to be talking about next week then. NeSe's new religion and where are you intending to put the compound, man? You know? Hey, it's got to come with a compound and it's not real.
On the res. On the res.
Here we go.
And you're all invited.
Yep. A good bit early there. A good little bit early. Yep.
Just a bit.
What are you eating, NeSe? What are you doing to me? What was that? What was it?
Munchies. That's what it was.
Handcrafting tinfoil into a really noisy machine thing.
He's analyzing.
See?
He's analyzing the material that came
no,
off of
no. Oh no,
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we could still hear you.
Yes.
Hang on, we'll go back. Here we go.
It's not letting me mute. Okay, let me just put this down.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa. We are back. We are live. Yes, indeed. And I've no idea. I think NeSe is trying to crawl his way out of a tinfoil bag right now. Lots of noise going on. And I want to give a big shout out to ZX81 in the chat room. Oh no, don't do this. You see, right, this happens when I'm on with Bill as well, Scott. When I'm on with Bill will give my mum a shout out. And my mum, about 30 seconds later, because of the delay in streaming and things, she always comes back and says, "Hello, Bill." Now, I noticed a little minute ago when we were talking about my mum and flatulence and people that are just tuning back in live on the radio right now are going, "What did we miss during the break?" Nothing. Nothing. It doesn't need to be repeated. But what I did notice was ZX saying, "Hi, Pearl." And then just as the music started there, oh, how cute. "Hi, ZX." It's as if she tells me on here, somehow she thinks like ZX is going to hear it. I don't know what it is, dude. It's like, hey, it must be a boomer thing. You know, I don't know. But it amuses me. It amuses me. But now I'm just picturing everyone in the chat room saying hello. And I'm going to get all these messages from old Pearly saying, "Hello, hi there, hi everyone." You know.
Well, she did hear it because you relayed the message.
Damn,
right?
dude. So, yeah, so she knew it'd get there in the end. I'll just annoy my son with it. Yep, they're all at it in the chat room now. Yeah, "Hi, Pearl, hi. No, I'm not sitting. Don't even think about it, mother. I'm not going full Norman and reading out your hello list. So, boys, where do we go now? Final segment. We've got Brent Thomas warming up just over the horizon. So, yeah, it's getting ready with the paranormal portal. I see him putting it together, man. He's sparking up.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
Oh, good Lord. They're all at it now in the chat room. Stop it.
I guess since we're on this topic of Titanic, the ocean.
Oh, it's just constant.
Is Pearly blowing it up? She's blowing up the phone.
She's on a dopamine quest right now. She'll be sitting there. Her face will be flushed and by golly. She'll be sitting there rubbing her wee knee all happy. Oh, look, they're all saying hello to me. Yeah, we'll give her hell, man. It's going again. Oh, hi, Auntie Luna. Oh my God! Oh, good grief, give me peace. She must be watching all the chat rooms, and she's going to answer them all one by one. Yeah. So where are we going to go? And now my night's complete because ZX having a good time. He's laughing. That's what I like to hear. Yes. Over at you, boys. Where are we going?
So, do we want to talk about some ships that disappeared without a trace. Nobody knows why.
If you want, man. If you want.
Okay. All right. I've got a little article pulled up here.
Nice.
It says, you want me to drop it in?
If you want, yeah, go for it, dude.
Okay. Let me copy this over and we'll get into it. All right. So we've got 7 ships that have disappeared without a trace. And guess nobody knows what happened to them. So it says, there's something ghoulishly fascinating about a mysterious disappearance, and our vast oceans offer seemingly endless space in which to vanish, right? That's that whole 73% of the Earth's surface covered in it. There's a lot going on out there.
A lot of space.
Yeah, a lot of space. It says the true fate of many of these ships will never be known, but speculation suggests that storms, piracy, mutiny, accidental bombing, and even the attack of a giant squid could be responsible for their vanishings. Below are 7 ships, I should say, that have disappeared without leaving a trace. Number 1, the Patriot. The disappearance of the Theodosia Burr Alston. Theodosia Burr Alston, 1783 to 1813, was the daughter of American politician and 3rd Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr. Theodosia had a privileged upbringing and a good education, and in 1801 she married wealthy landowner Joseph Alston, who went on to become governor of South Carolina. Sadly, in 1812, Theodosia lost her only son to a fever, and she became sick with grief. Desperate for a change of scene, on New Year's Eve in 1812, she boarded the schooner Patriot in South Carolina to visit her father in New York. It is known that the ship left dock and sailed north, but what happened after is a mystery. It never arrived in New York, and no trace of the ship or crew was ever found. A number of theories and legends have sprung up around the fate of Theodosia. Some claim the ship was attacked by pirates and that she was forced to walk the plank, while others suggest that the Patriot got caught up in the War of 1812 and was sunk accidentally by an enemy ship. Perhaps most fanciful of all is the story put forward by Karankawa, Indian chief, who claimed that he rescued a woman who had washed up on shore after a shipwreck, and that before she passed, she gifted him her locket with the name Theodosia inscribed upon it. Whatever the story it is likely that after more than 200 years we shall never know the real fate of the Patriot and Theodosia Burr Alston. Interesting. So just a ship that disappeared? No.
These ships that just disappeared, they're all kind of shrouded in mystery, right? I mean, I've seen one of it was like one of the old kind of see the ships with a wheel on it, guys, like kind of like, I don't know what you call it, steam paddle, yeah, but it was like it set off. I think it was going across one of the Great Lakes in America, and it hadn't made it. Can't remember the name of it, but a famous story. But again, shrouded in mystery.
Fitzgerald.
Was it the Fitzgerald?
Possibly. Possibly.
The Edmund Fitzgerald, because they wrote a song and everything about it.
I don't want to say yes, definitely. Like, where did that go down?
Well, the Edmund Fitzgerald went down in...
It was either Superior or Michigan. One of the two big ones.
Yeah, definitely one of the Great Lakes one anyway.
It was carrying... It was an iron ore ship. So... Yeah, I don't know. But that's a very famous one, the Fitzgerald. All right, so moving on here, we got number 2, the Merchant Royal, one of the richest shipwrecks never found. Ooh, so we'll see what was aboard this ship. It says the Merchant Royal was tasked with taking treasures from the New World to Spain under the command of one Captain John Limbry. In 1641, the ship was loaded with 100,000 pounds of gold.
What was it, an Anunnaki mothership?
Like, jeez. A lot of gold, man. So yeah, 100,000 pounds of gold, 400 bars of Mexican silver, and a huge amount of precious jewels. As the ship entered the English waters, the weather turned bad. But unfortunately, the pumps on board the ship broke, and it began to take on water. Its sister ship, the Dover Merchant, with whom it had been sailing in tandem, came to the rescue of the captain and crew, but were unable to take any of the cargo. The ship disappeared beneath the waves somewhere off the coast of Land's End. Of course, with such valuable cargo, countless people have attempted to find the wreck, which has become known as the El Dorado of the seas.
No wonder.
Yeah. In 2007, it was thought that that Odyssey Marine Exploration may have found the wreck after it salvaged 500,000 pieces of gold and silver from a site off the southwestern tip of Great Britain. This was later identified as treasure from a Spanish vessel, meaning that the unimagined riches of the Merchant Royal still await discovery. Wow, just think of that. There's a
Could be that. It could have been that ended up down Oak Island's hole.
Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? Exactly, dude. Exactly.
Because we don't know. All right, number 3, the USS Cyclops. Was it the victim of the Bermuda Triangle?
Or a one-eyed kraken.
Ooh.
Being a cyclops and all.
Yeah, exactly. Says the USS Cyclops was a huge steel-hulled fuel ship tasked with carrying coal and other useful supplies for the U.S. Navy in the 1910s. On her final journey, the Cyclops set sail from Rio de Janeiro with a full load of 10,800 tons of manganese ore and over 300 people on board. On March 4th, 1918, the ship was spotted for the last time as it left Barbados and sailed into what we now sometimes call the Bermuda Triangle.
Uh-oh.
The ship seemingly disappeared without a trace, and the case has been seen as especially mysterious since no distress call was made and no bad weather was reported in the region. Theories began to surface, some more imaginative than others, that the ship had been sunk by Germans, attacked by a giant squid or octopus, or been victim of a violent mutiny. A huge search for the Cyclops was launched, with a number of boats and planes scouring the area for debris or survivors. But nothing of the enormous ship was ever seen again.
So
this one sounds interesting.
The bad guys are always thrown in there, right beside the giant squid this time. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Never far away from the finger being pointed at them, aren't they? No.
Never. Well, this is interesting. Just the name of this boat.
Yep.
Already. So we have a boat here called the Witchcraft, and it was deemed an unsinkable luxury yacht.
Well, as we found out earlier on, that unsinkable title doesn't really count for much, eh? The last thing you want to claim a boat is unsinkable.
Probably not a good idea to be so arrogant and slap that title on your vessel before you go sailing.
That's it. Maybe it was the universe. Maybe the universe just gets angry anytime something calls itself unsinkable.
That's what somebody in the chat said earlier, and they're like,
You're just asking for balance.
Just asking to be, you're asking to be balanced, like NeSe just said. So yes, we have the Witchcraft, the quote unquote unsinkable luxury yacht. It says on December 22nd, 1967, experienced yachtsman Dan Burrock and his friend Father Patrick Horgan set sail in the 23-foot luxury yacht Witchcraft to see the holiday lights off the coast of Miami. Unfortunately, after just 1 mile, the pair experienced difficulty when it seemed as if the yacht had hit something. Burke calmly called the Miami Coast Guard to report the trouble and request assistance. The official who took the call later commented that Burke seemed unconcerned, perhaps because the yacht was fitted with a special flotation device that was supposed to make the vessel unsinkable. The Coast Guard arrived at the scene just 19 minutes after the call and were surprised to find no trace of the large yacht, no debris, and no sign of Burke or Horgan. Over the next 6 days, hundreds of square miles of ocean were searched, but nothing was ever found. And the Witchcraft has been chalked up as another vessel mysteriously lost to the Bermuda Triangle.
And these two characters are celebrated to this day as arriving from another universe. Wherever they ended up. I'm telling you, dude, they sailed into a harbor.
Right.
They sailed back to Florida, only it ain't the Florida they left from. Telling you, dude.
That is kind of crazy because, once again, we're talking about a pretty quick response time. I mean, we had people out there within 19 minutes. I mean, how far can a boat really go in 19 minutes?
Dude, exactly. It went to another universe.
They searched hundreds of miles. It just, boom, these guys were gone. And the USS Witchcraft, or whatever, the USS Witchcraft, the Witchcraft, or whatever you want to name this vessel. Maybe they
I thought last week that ship there was already docked at Speculation Island.
I've seen it as well, NeSe. I've seen it as well. I think we've seen the Andrea Gale as well. The next one. Yep.
All right. Number 5, the Andrea Gale, lost in the perfect storm. The Andrea Gale was a 72-foot long liner boat that fished in the northern Atlantic for swordfish.
Oh, 72, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, numbers of demons in the Goetia. Oh, my word.
In September of 1991, the ship, along with several other fishing vessels, set sail from Gloucester, Massachusetts, for the last fishing season. For the last fishing session of the season. By October, the Andrea Gale and its 6-man crew was out off the coast of Newfoundland when the confluence of terrible weather fronts conspired to create what has been dubbed the perfect storm. And a movie was made out of it, which was an excellent movie as well. The massively powerful winds were whipping waves as high as 100 feet, and any ship caught in their path faced being sucked into the wave and flipped over repeatedly. The devastating storm battered the coast of New England and Canada, and after the worst part of it had passed and the Andrea Gale had failed to return to port, a number of rescue missions set out to find the ship, but nothing was ever found. The story of the storm and the imagined fate of the Andrea Gale and her crew was later told in the book The Perfect Storm by Sebastian Junger, as well as a Hollywood movie of the same name. Well, I mean, that one, at least we kind of know what happened to it. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the storm took it down.
Yeah, some of these waves and things that are generated out there, the big freak killer waves, they're real, folks. They're real. And that is a good movie. Good movie.
Yeah,
right,
it is.
We've got the porpoise. What's happened here, Scott?
The USS Porpoise. That's a word I can't say. Porpoise? Porpoise?
Porpoise. Yes, it's one of the few that I can say. One of the few.
Wow, interesting. Caught in a typhoon. The USS Porpoise was a brig involved in 19th century exploration and surveying missions, taking part in a voyage in 1838 that confirmed the existence of Antarctica. Oh, so this ship confirmed that Antarctica was there, and later circumnavigating the globe. In 1854, the ship set sail from Hong Kong carrying 69 men in order to carry out a survey of the South Sea Islands, somewhere between China and Taiwan. The ship sailed into dense fog and was separated from its partnership, the USS Vicinus, and never seen again. Many ships searched for the ill-fated brig for over a year, but no sign was ever found. And it's thought to have been wrecked in a typhoon with all hands lost. So they think it was hit by a typhoon, but they don't know for sure.
You don't know.
It drifted into some fog, Kev, and was never seen again. All right, our final one here, I believe. And they have a bonus one also, but we'll see if we can get to that. The HMS, was it Sappho? Presumed wrecked off the Australian coast. Over the course of a 20-year career, the British Navy ship HMS Sappho worked to suppress the slave trade off the coast of West Africa, intercepting a number of ships loaded with slaves and freeing hundreds of people. In 1857, after wrongly chasing down and boarding an American ship, an event that caused something of a diplomatic crisis between America and Great Britain, the ship was ordered to set sail to Australia. The Sappho reached Cape Town without incident, and from there headed towards the Bass Strait. Oh, isn't that where the Australian Triangle is? The Bass Strait Triangle? I think we've talked about that before. Where it was last spotted by a passing brig on February 18th, 1878. Bad weather was reported in the area and has been assumed that high winds caused the ship to founder and sink. No sign of the 147 crew members were ever found, but rumors abound that the captain, Fairfax Moresby, had somehow escaped the wreck and made it to an island off Australia where he was said to have lost his mind. Ooh.
That's pretty interesting, that one.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then we have a bonus. Was it Bechimo? The Arctic ghost ship. As the SS Bechimo started life as a German trading vessel before being given to Great Britain after World War I as part of reparations. The Bechimo came under the ownership of the Hudson Bay Company and made many voyages across the Atlantic from Scotland to Canada to trade with local Inuit tribes. In 1931, while journeying to Vancouver with a cargo of furs, the Bechimo fell victim to an early winter as ice floes surrounded the ship and locked it in an icy embrace. The crew escaped the stricken vessel and fled across the ice floes to safety, but some returned a few days later to try and rescue the ship and its valuable cargo. After over a month of braving the treacherous weather in a flimsy camp, a huge blizzard hit the remaining crew, and the remaining crew lost sight of the ship. Once the storm had cleared, the watching crew were surprised to find that the Bechimo had disappeared. They assumed it had sunk without a trace. A week later, the ship was spotted by an Inuit hunter, and the crew raced back on board to gather as much of the cargo as possible. The captain decided the ship was too badly damaged to be seaworthy, so abandoned it, thinking it would soon break apart. How wrong he was. Over the years, the Bechimo was sighted a number of times, sometimes caught fast in ice and other times floating ghost-like through the Arctic waters. The last confirmed sighting was in 1969, an astonishing 37 years after it had been abandoned to its fate. So they thought this thing was going to sink, but it didn't. It's just been kind of stuck out there in the Arctic ice, and it'll sometimes break free and float around, and then the ice will form around it again and freeze it in another place. And so there's basically a ghost ship, an unmanned ship out there that sometimes breaks free and is floating around. It's interesting.
Well,
I wonder if it's out there.
Save the best for last, because if you're looking for mystery ships, I will never ever forget when I had Walter Bosley on the show, and he talked to me about the mystery airships in the 1800s. What? Mystery airships? Yep. Here we go. Ghost airships of the 1800s. We've only got a couple of minutes left, folks, but go and Google this yourself. It's fascinating. A mysterious wave of airship sightings took place in the US between 1896 and 1897. and there's plenty of mystery to go around. It says here in the late 1890s, strange airships started being spotted sailing across the country's skies. While lighter than air airships had been around since the 1850s, their capabilities were far more limited, and they were not nearly as big as those being observed. Witnesses described the ship or ships as being 150 to 200 feet long and moving at speeds of roughly 135 to 150 miles per hour. Airships at the time, usually got to between 5 and 7 miles per hour. The first sighting occurred in November 1896 in Sacramento, California, when hundreds of witnesses observed a steady light attached to some kind of large vessel pass across the sky overhead. Some said they could hear voices singing from the ship, and one witness, R.L. Lowry, told the news that he could hear a man issuing out orders. "Throw her up higher. She'll hit the steeple." Now, according to Lowry, the airship had a cigar-shaped body with wheels at the side and apparently appeared to be powered by two men seated on a bicycle frame. And on that note, folks, head on over to the Paranormal Portal. Brent's coming up right after the break. We'll be back next week, wherever you are. Make it TFR. There you go. I'll finish this a little bit and then we'll get out of here. But yeah, like I say, this is still one of the most fascinating things that I've ever come across on the show. Bosley was the one who brought it up there, but it says here, apart from the fact that we're already talking about a thing that's flying, that's totally out of place for the kind of thing they had at the time, and not only that, but it's powered by two men seated on a bicycle-like frame. But it goes on. Over the next 6 months, the sightings moved eastward across the country, with reports as far as Chicago. In total, there were approximately 150 sightings in roughly 20 states. Then in April 1897, just as suddenly as they had started, the sightings came to an abrupt stop. While many accounts can be written off as hoaxes, mass hysteria, or even the misidentification of astral phenomena such as comet or meteors, a handful of accounts were credible enough to generate some lift. It says, for the most part, witnesses described the occupants of the airships as not humans, but as human-like. The first possible evidence for little green men occurred just a few days after the Sacramento sighting, 50 miles north in a town called Stockton. Colonel H.G. Shaw was driving his buggy through the countryside when he stumbled upon a landed spacecraft. Now, according to Shaw, the vessel was roughly 25 feet in diameter and 150 feet long. It had a metal outer surface and, other than what appeared to be a rudder, was completely devoid of any additional external features. Now, he observed three strange, slender creatures moving about the aircraft, emitting a strange, warbling noise. The creatures approached him and attempted to force him on board, but the colonel, obviously being a strong, brave man, and totally not embellishing his story at all, quickly overpowered them and fled. There's another account, a bit out of this world, was reported by the Dallas Morning News the following year, in April of 1897, after an airship was spotted crashing into a windmill. The mangled wreckage was described as being a mixture of aluminium or aluminum, for you guys over there, and silver, with bizarre hieroglyphic-like drawings scattered about the debris. Sound like Roswell, anyone? Only 1897. Yeah.
This sounds like a 1897 version of Roswell. You've got a crashed aircraft. You got some kind of a strange alloy that was found. You've got engravings or strange marks. It's got all of the characteristics.
What about that? The one Jim Mars used to talk about, the Aurora.
Yeah, that's a famous one where there's possibly something in a graveyard. It says here the pilot deceased was allegedly not a habitant of this world. In 1973, a group of UFO investigators located the crash site, which apparently contained the pilot's grave marked by a headstone. Probably the same one we're talking about here, NeSe. Their metal detectors picked up evidence of foreign materials under the surface, leading them to request permission to excavate. The request was denied, and when they revisited the location a few years later, the headstone and all subsurface metals were gone. It says the existence of extraterrestrials may be entertaining to mull over, but also tantalizing is the existence of mysterious inventors creating mysterious things. A San Francisco attorney, George Airship Collins, claimed to represent an anonymous inventor who allegedly conducted his test flights at night in order to avoid detection. Now, according to Collins, the airship was 150 feet long and able to carry a load of 15 passengers. As he told the press, it was built on the airplane system and has two canvas wings 18 feet wide and a rudder shaped like a bird's tail. But failing ever to produce this mysterious inventor and growing tired of public ridicule, Collins later recanted his claims. Says while Collins may have been telling tall tales, it doesn't mean that others weren't hard at work building and testing airships. In 1884, a 165-foot battery-powered airship made a successful 5-mile, 23-minute round-trip flight in France. The flight proved that safely controlling an aircraft was possible with a powerful enough motor. However, its flight range was sharply limited by battery life, and its top speed was 6 miles per hour, making it far slower and less robust than the airships being spotted across the US. And it is hard to imagine the building of such giant flying structures being done in secret, but it's not impossible. Then again, perhaps this was all just fake news. It does say if one thing hasn't changed much in the last 150 years, it's the media and its lust for sexy headlines. Yellow journalism was in full swing in the 1800s, with reporters regularly embellishing and even fabricating stories to boost sales. While many people have truly believed they saw something sailing by overhead, was it really an airship? I think it was. Or was it instead something less fanciful, like a comet, a meteor, or even a plane? Well, a comet or a meteor, you don't tend to find people like shouting we're going to hit the steeple, and there's not singing and dancing and stuff like that. And a plane in 1896, I don't know. Well, this is now starting to sound like fake news. The fake news about the fake news. Unfortunately, the only available witness accounts are those published in the newspapers at the time. Listen, do you know what's really interesting about this as well, though? And you need to really go and check out Walter Bosley, because he tells it best. He's written books about it. But there was like something called, I think it was the Sonora Flying Club. And it was a bunch of, again, I think if memory serves me correctly, a bunch of Germans that had actually emigrated or migrated over to the US. And they had started this Sonora Flying Club or Aviation Club. And the only reason I bring that up is because I'll try and dig up some of their drawings right now. Sonora Flying Machines. See if that brings up. Because the machines that they have drawings of and things look very, very similar to airships and stuff like that. And this is the drawings I'm talking about. Here we go. Now, NeSe, to just kind of explain this to you, there's ones that do look like they are kind of airship contraptions. But this is also the weird, it gets into a weird kind of deep woo. Because I'm pretty sure if you go down some of these and you look closely at some of the designs, I'm pretty sure on one of them it's got something to do with like Trump. But that's where it gets into the whole realm of time travelers and stuff like that, NeSe. So to kind of summarize, if you're looking for mysterious ships, I think some of the most mysterious ones, there it is, the Sonora, Sonora Aero Club.
Yeah.
Charles Delshow, that's the dude you want to look into. You remember this, Scotty, and how it all ties in with like the time travelers and everything?
Yeah, and then it got into, what was it, NIMSA
NIMSA,
and all
that
of that.
was it. Yeah, the NIMSA, man.
Yeah. The NIMSA and all that stuff. No, I mean, when this Sonora Flying Club, they were in full operation around the same time that people were spotting these airships, and a lot of people believe that it was the Sonora Air Club that was responsible for a lot of these sightings. And they had some really, really wild, radical designs that are very, very interesting. Like, if this was just a small of people that were just kind of getting together doing it, it was almost like a, what would you consider it, Kev? Like a secret society for flight?
The Brotherhood of Aviation.
Yeah, it was like some kind of aviation secret society thing going on where they were just like getting together and sharing kind of their ideas amongst themselves and testing it out. But they came up with some crazy designs. You've got like floating orb designs. You've got like,
Just
I mean, look at
craziness, dude. Like big balls, and there's a lot of people. I've seen somebody in the chat room mentioning Tartarian technology. Possibly.
See,
You remember?
that thing right there looked like something you would see like a lunar lander or something, you know, with the tanks and everything on the side of it. It's just like
Bizarre.
weird. Yeah.
What's your thoughts, NeSe, before we wrap this one up, man?
Well, it makes me think about the time when Fred and Barney were able to create that flying gizmo that Barney was able to propel. I don't remember what it was called. I wish I could, but it was, oh, dang it. But, you know, even Leonardo da Vinci had the basic engineer designs for helicopters and the such. So I'm sure one civilization before us did it before we did.
Yeah, the Tartarian thing. It's I tell you what, the look of these drawings, stuff like that, kind of ties in with. I think it was ZX I seen saying it. Yeah, I get that feeling from ZX, and again, I don't even know if Tartaria was a thing. Who knows? Certainly an interesting line of.
What I think is when you see stuff like this, like the Sonora Flying Club sketches,
It's weird.
all the way to like the Vedic fly, or you know, the Vermanas and the way that they're drawn. When you see any of these kind of sketches of these flying craft and everything, there's always kind of a similarity to them all. Like there's almost like there's this underlying technology that's being utilized for all of this stuff, right? Maybe it has to do with like this core knowledge that people are pulling from the Akashic record, right? Like I don't know, but there's like a familiarity. I think every time we start talking about these exotic flying machines or people representing these things at a time when the technology didn't really exist, you know, these people that are thinking far ahead of their time. There always seems to be a weird similarity between it all.
Did I ever share with you guys about my video about the bad guys of www.122
Nope.
and the UFOs?
Nope.
Yeah, I'll drop it in after the show. But it's an old weird video I had on VHS that I put out there on my the Megaphone Man YouTube page that I don't
Remember
pay
to check
attention
the
to much.
Megaphone Man YouTube page, folks, because we are at the end of our time. Yes, indeed. Big shout out to everyone who tuned in to today. Remember to share the video after we're done here. Let other people see it, and we'll be back same time, same place next week. If you're a member on KBS2, remember, if you're a member, Sunday, our members only stream. That'll be at 8:30 in the UK, and that is at 3:30 over in the US on the East Coast, 12:30 in the afternoon. And it's also a really silly, crazy time in the morning for Australian people. And talking of Australian people, remember coming up this Thursday, if you're in the UK or the US, and on Friday morning, if you're in Australia, we're going to have Stephen and Evan Strong back on the show to talk about the rings of Atlantis, the earthworks, some of the archaeological anomalies, and more of our forgotten origins, which of course leads us to our alien ancestry. So, on that note, I doff my cap to you all. You get a quick look at my lockdown here. Scotty's lost his hair, it's gone that mad. NeSe, he's constantly got a hat on. And we're out of here. Like, we just don't care. So we're gone. At that point, Scott, we're gone. I've got nothing left to say. 3 hours and 11 minutes. I'm spent, dude. I'm done.
The ship has sailed.
3 hours and 22 minutes would have been even better to start conspiracies out there. Because we know, I know you folks. I know you all look for the conspiracy. So if we'd gone to 322, that would definitely be a good one. But 311, there's enough you can work there with your geometric. Yes.
It's 11. It's 11 after 9.
There you go. There you go.
Come sail away, come
Keep
sail
your
away,
mind
come
open.
sail away with
Keep looking
woo.
for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.
Freaky Friday with the Woe Crew. Special guest, Dave on the wah wah pedal.